I think I raised his hand. Yeah, he can't right now because he doesn't have that ability.
Same thing that you said.
Kind of, yeah, except for the three of it's still there.
So I should be in there, Brian. I should be on the list to add. Yep. Yeah.
So time is 6:30. So we're going to begin public comment. Gives you an opportunity. Do we need to mute one of them? Okay. Just seems like there's some echo going on. Gives you the opportunity to speak on any item that's not included on tonight's agenda. You'll have up to 5 minutes. We also have comment cards that are available for signing as well if you don't want to come to the podium. The first person that is set to come up and speak is Ray Tuff. Mm-hmm.
We ready? Okay. Ray Tuff, 1825 North Keene. City Council, thank you. Tonight's the first night that we've been able to actually speak about the Humane Society since it's not on the agenda and open public comment. So I wanted to remind you guys that Bessie is the case that started all of the DCHS nightmare coming to light. And because of Bessie, people found the courage to come forward of all the wrongdoings with DCHS and more importantly, Tamar Reed. Many things that the leaders of this town didn't want to come to public or know or to see have come to surface. While I know that filing a lawsuit on the city is just the beginning. Trust me, more hidden secrets and lies are to come out into the public while this town has had one chance to fix it and didn't. The truth always wins and comes out, but setting that aside, let's focus on the animals. This is the message that I received from Bessie's grandfather. Bessie had blood in her stool and severe diarrhea. The vet said she could go in and see what the problem was, but since she was old and within a few months of just having surgery to be fixed, she didn't think that it was wise. She finished her life with her loving family, thanks to people like you that helped get her back. This then means that yet another dog has been lost on your watch. Bessie had to be put down because she could not handle another surgery at her age, since family was forced to have her spayed at 10 years old. This is something that is required by law, and not once, not twice, but 3 times was Betsy adopted out of that humane society, not being spayed. So whether it was of you guys not making Clem or Tamar follow the law and adopt her out unspayed, you still allowed Tamar to all of a sudden do what was supposed to do years ago and put that dog at risk. When we all know that putting a dog in surgery at 10 years old is going to kill her. So we now have the cases of Bessie, Cinnamon, Gia, and Keela that are all grounds for theft charges against Tamar. And the chief still hasn't arrested her. It's because of the leaders of this town that Betsy is gone. This should sound really familiar to one of you seated up here tonight. That was written back on April 27th when Betsy's situation came to light. It states, "Thank you for sharing your story. This feels like the last straw in a bad situation. I believe a resolution will be coming sooner than later. I have a child that volunteers at Forever Homes. Other than that, others from no association are taking the lead on this, and I expect it to be in the front of City Council as soon as possible. Understand most, if not all, of City Council are interested in getting this situation rectified. Thanks again." Well, Mark Jensen, here we are 6 months later, and many issues have been brought to the mayor and council. And after fighting like hell and only having our 3 angel stooges that didn't have a broken compass to help us fight for building a case or for getting an RFP released that was released only on your website, not actually out to the general public, for bids for new animal control. Yet because of you guys, this horrible organizational chart, lives of the dogs are still at risk. There are many citizens asking me daily of why nothing is being done. And the truth is the exiting mayor has caused horrible conditions when he hired Brian Newton as an administrator. Not even checking out his history of why he would even hire somebody who had recently been ran out of Alaska for damaging and harming Fairbanks. It's beyond me, but you even hired him at a high price. Then you hired him an assistant, Shane Weimer, who is the officer that was allowed to stay on the force, but he can't be out in the public. Yet he becomes the assistant to Newton, which makes him above our chief half of the day. So how do you expect the chief to do his job and hold these people accountable for the wrongdoing when he's assisting, when the mayor and the city administrator and his assistant are tying the chief's hands? We are all left up to wonder why you guys are protecting Tamar so much. I have often believed that the chief of police may be involved because still, even after having Maddie Matthews come forward and Amanda Comstock, which has put into written words for you guys that Tamar has actually stolen dogs, and you guys still have yet to arrest her. So if the chief does do anything, then Weimer will take him off the next day and at work, I'm sure. Well, how does anyone expect even Ollie to press charges on charges that are never filed? Every day is clear that more and more people are uncovering something big, and they don't care. That you guys may not care about your moral compass. I myself have stood up here and asked you guys to do whatever illegal activities you feel you must do, but leave the animals out of it. Have you done anything other than the RFP? While we thank you for at least doing that, this is still unacceptable that Tamara is left to abuse animals and not be put behind bars, either months ago, if not years ago. If Tamara's
We'll have to have you wrap it up.
okay, well, I guess it's time that the feds probably get involved, and it's either sink or swim. So I hope you brought your life jacket.
Larry Marvin. Again, this is any item that's not included on the agenda.
But it's on the agenda too.
No,
I can't say it and go home.
you can say it when the item comes up on the agenda, but public comment is any item that is not on the agenda.
Sorry.
No problem. The sign up's up here. You're actually next one up. It's fine. Yeah.
I just say my name.
Yeah. And
Christine
address.
Greenfield, 1256 North Clarkson Street. I am the mother of Cinnamon. I just have started coming to the city council meetings with Rachel. Won't stop coming per my work is limited time schedule. I waited over a year to even see my dog last year. Tamara came, a Humane Society came up with 3 different stories of what happened to my dog, what was going on with her, and where they found her. It's clearly a lie. There are council members that have been part of those stories. So I still wonder which one is true today. I had to go to the police for dispatch records, and then all of a sudden my dog was found wandering the next day, taken care of with a horrible skin infection from dog bites. And yet she had been wandering for 2 weeks, was near no one took care of her. $500 reward, no one turned it in. And so I go and make a statement, and then she's found wandering. It's clear that there are so many lies going on. I read about the Humane Society. The financials are out of order. They haven't been turned in. There's this many dogs, but only this many dogs can be housed. She hasn't turned in different reports. The last city council meeting I was at, it was discussed that no more animals would be taken in, that there would be some type of release action plan, something to be made, something to be done. From what I understand, this has been going on for years with her specifically in the Humane Society. I know that I don't ever feel safe with my dog. I have locks on my 6-foot privacy fence that I have. The latches from the outside don't open. I have signs, and this is just so I can visit and have my dog at my house for a time. There are so many other people that do not feel safe. This is a city, the Humane Society. It's not supposed to be known for that, especially in Fremont, Nebraska. I just never imagined any type of these things going on. So she is a member of my family. She is loved, cared for. And I mean, if you can imagine anyone or any animal that you love that much going a year of your life, of her life, without seeing them and knowing they're so close yet so far away. She had to be housed outside of Dodge County. Like, what does that say? A foster home had to be specifically found outside of Dodge County because of one person at an organization. What's that?
Thank you. Teresa.
Do I need to say my address and everything?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Teresa Seawick, 1929 East 9th Street, Fremont. Okay, once again, I want to thank the council members who took the initiative to make a monthly open comment sessions a reality, because your efforts are afforded the citizens of Fremont an opportunity to raise issues and concern. I only wish the community would take advantage of this opportunity that has been created. Having said that, I'm here tonight to reprimand this present group of council members, those leaving and those who will remain, because you let the citizens who served down by failing to accomplish a much needed reform of the city's animals control process, and your contracts agents unbelievable treatment of the public and inhumane treatment of animals. Reform in both public areas has been and remains paramount to this community. How these problems could be left unattended by you for so long is unexcusable. These unresolved problems have existed for years, and it's been over 7 months since this community rose up en masse to defend the animals in this town that can't speak for themselves. Tonight, I ask each of you, what did you specifically do to rectify the city's problems? Admittedly, some of you have tried, some harder than others, but some of you have been far less than helpful. Sometimes you even stood firmly opposed to those council members who actively sought to produce prompt actions. Actions do speak louder than words, and far too often has been apparent that some of you who have served only to obstruct and delay the process. If you have performed your elected duties to this community and had actually studied the city animal control contract, its city's municipal code, and the underlying Nebraska laws for yourself, I'm confident that this community would still be discussing this matter. Forming the Animal Control Citizen Advisory Board to investigate and document the contract's violation appeared months ago to be the good first step. But this body failed to appropriately support their efforts. In my opinion, you all failed because you all fell prey to the delaying tactics employed not only by the DCHS, but by the city administration and its complacent legal advisors. You know who you are, and if the shoe fits. Unfortunately, for the helpless animals, the delaying tactics appear to have worked. But then came at a significant cost, not only to the animals, but to the taxpaying public who paid for DCHS services. They did not perform. For that, I say shame on each and every one of you for your part in the stringing out this mess and subjecting the public to the costs associated with the delays. I'm appalled. You should be embarrassed at the lack of progress to this date. So to those who failed to take timely action and who are leaving your position, I ask that you take a few minutes to reflect on how you failed this. Community, the families, the pets living here, to those returning to your seats to serve with the newly elected council members, I ask that you each can reconsider your past actions and tactics in order to better serve the interests of those who elected you. Many citizens took initiative to organize and take their valuable personal time to voice of the animals that cannot speak or defend themselves. Hopefully their efforts have not been in vain. Being a pet-friendly city that affords the humane treatment of animals falls directly upon your purview. So I urge each of you to act and perform like you understand your role and responsibility going forward. I also challenge those who are returning to educate and collaborate with the new members and terminating the city's contract with DCH as soon as possible. I encourage that the incoming council pick a replacement for DCHS that will ensure the animals will finally get the treatment they deserve. In closing, it's my deep and earnest prayer for each of you that you individually and collectively recognize the urgency of resolving the suffering and plight of innocent animals. Surely by what the public has shared in your meetings over the course of the past 7 months and for what you have seen and heard from the concerned citizens over social media, you must know that issues are real and your action is required. Please don't continue to be complacent in the horrendous treatment that DCSH has rendered to the citizens of Fremont and their pets they love and care for. It's time for each of you to be proactive leaders and do your part in restoring the public's trust in you, even if it means facing a potential lawsuit. Thank you for hearing me out. Now, please do the right thing and bring this matter to a final conclusion. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? This would be on any item that's not on the agenda. Sir, if you'd want to come up and just fill this out, that way you have record. That's good. Thank you.
Gregory Carmen, 67 South Maple. A couple years ago, I read or heard about some discussion amongst the city concerning silent railroad crossings. And I haven't really heard anything more. I haven't contacted my council reps, although I'm sure they would respond. But I just wondered if there's anything more going on as far as discussing that or considering it. I think the time is now to consider silent crossings in town with all the technology that we have. It seems to be not only annoying, but it seems to be getting a little worse with all the train traffic coming through town. So I don't think it needs to be a 24/7 deal. Maybe 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., something like that. But I just wondered if it's still in the back of your minds, if anything more has been discussed about it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're currently in the public comment period, so anybody that would wish to come forward and speak on any item that's not included on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Does that include the new business items?
Yes,
Yes, speak now or wait?
you'll have to wait till the new business items.
Thanks.
Again, we're currently in the public comment period. Anybody that wishes to come forward and speak on any item not included on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so. You'll have up to 5 minutes to speak. If you wish to not come forward but want to fill out a comment cards are over on the table to my left.
Mask talk is later.
Mask will be later on the agenda, yes. Okay. Tyler, is she ready to go? Nana, are you muted? Again, we're in the 5-minute public comment period. Nana, I see your hand up. Go ahead, Nana.
Yes, I was just wondering, after the flood, the contaminated sand could not be pushed back into the river along the river edges of the property owners. I was just wondering about this pile of contaminated from the flood dirt that's stockpiled along Morningside, what they were going to be doing with that.
If you would state your name and address for the record, that would be great as well. We're still in the 5-minute public comment period. If anyone would like to come forward and speak on any item that's not included on tonight's agenda, is welcome to do so. You'll have up to 5 minutes. Anybody that is on Zoom that wishes to speak is welcome as well. Again, we have about 5 minutes left in the public comment period. Anybody that wishes to come forward and speak on any item not included on tonight's agenda is welcome to do so, or anybody that is on Zoom is welcome to speak as well. Pam Trim, I see your hands up.
Hello, this is Pam Prim, 1411 Barber Street, Fremont. I'd like to thank both of the two outgoing women on the council. Linda, I've known for years, and although I didn't always see eye to eye with her, I respect her efforts. And Susan, you represented my ward. I'm going to miss you and your opinions and your due diligence, and hope to see both of you throughout the year still involved with city matters. Thank you again.
We still have a few minutes in the public comment period. Anybody wishing to come forward and speak on any item not related to an item on the agenda is welcome to do so. You'll have up to 5 minutes. Time is 7 p.m. We will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll call the Board of Equalization meeting to order. Time is 7 p.m. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. First item would be roll call.
Please vote for roll call. We have 7 council members present, but Councilmember Coons.
Councilmember Coons, can you just clarify for the record that you have been instructed to quarantine by a health professional? And then you could vote as present for the Board of Equalization meeting.
Councilmember Coons, you're still muted. Councilmember Coons, are you available? He's here. You're still muted, though. There
Can you hear
go.
me now?
Yep.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me unmute.
Okay.
But I'm present and I've been instructed to self-quarantine because I'm still positive for COVID-19.
8 council members are present, Mayor.
Moving to the first item, Resolution 2020-229, levying a special tax and assessment in the amount of $498.13 against North Side Lot 5, Block 32, known as 1805 North Platte, to pay the costs of weeds and debris removal and assessment. At this time, we'll have staff report.
Mayor and council, this item is pretty self-explanatory in the agenda. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to Resolution 2020-229. Councilman Legban,
I make a motion to approve resolution 2020-229.
Councilman Yeager,
I second the motion.
cast your votes. Councilman Coons,
I vote yes. I vote yes.
we got you. Thank you.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Next item, I would take a motion to adjourn the Board of Equalization meeting of November 24th, 2020. Councilman Jensen,
I will make the motion to adjourn.
Councilman Legban,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
Councilman Coons,
I vote yes.
thank you. The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Meeting of the Board of Equalization is adjourned. Time is 7:05. We'll call the regular city council meeting of November 24th, 2020 to order. Time is 7:05. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. We'll begin with roll call.
Please cast your vote for roll call.
And then Councilman Coons,
Yes. Present.
Council members are present, Mayor.
next is mayor's comments. We do have some service awards this evening. The first is Michael Busser, 5 years of service. He will not be here. He was hired in 2015 as a wastewater plant operator for the Department of Utilities. He was promoted to wastewater operator 2 in 2018. 5 years of service. Alan Casper, 5 years of service. He was hired in 2015 as the Director of Electrical Engineering with the Department of Utilities. Scott Sofel, 5 years of service. I'm not sure he's here. I don't believe so. He was hired in 2015 as a power plant mechanic 1 for the Department of Utilities. Then in 2019, he was promoted to power plant mechanic number 2. The next person is Dan Resnicek, 35 years of service, hired in 1985 as a utility worker 3 for the Department of Utilities. Dan was promoted to maintenance mechanic 1, changed to power plant auxiliary operator, power plant operator 1, power plant operator 2, maintenance supervisor. Then in 2013, he was promoted to the assistant power plant supervisor. We would like to thank Dan for his 35 years of service. And next is Kim Koski, 25 years of service, started as a summer intern for the Parks and Recreation Department in 1992, was hired in 1995 as a recreation program coordinator for the Parks and Recreation Department. In 2005, Kim was promoted to the recreation superintendent, and in 2016, she was promoted to director of Parks and Recreation. Congratulations to Kim, Dan, Scott, Alan, and Michael for their years of service. Thank you. Just another quick update. Pretty good news. Today we found out late this afternoon, Chairman Missel spoke with Alan Gehring from the NRCS office. The Rawhide Creek WFPO application has been approved. It's approximately $745,000 towards the development of the Rawhide Creek watershed plan and environmental assessment for flood prevention. The Joint Water Management Advisory Board and JEO's persistence in seeking funding for flood mitigation activities, including planning, is really paying off. The planning initiative will result in a plan that will identify, prioritize specific structural actions to accomplish the flood prevention purposes. It will assist the Joint Water Management Group in identifying the most cost-effective locations to site bridge, culverts, channel improvements, berms, and dams, along with full detention structures. Just want to say that's tremendous news, and certainly the Joint Water Management Board has done a great job and needs to be commended for their service. With that, we'll move on to item 1 on the agenda. Motion to adopt current agenda for the November 24th, 2020 regular meeting. Is there any changes either from staff or the public or council? Councilmember Jacobus.
I would like to have item number 24 moved up to be directly after the public hearing for the consent agenda. Consideration due to some of those that want to speak on that, for and against.
Any other items? I would take a motion to move item 24 behind item 2 and before the consent agenda. Councilman Jensen.
I will make that motion.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I'll second it.
Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
I would now take a motion to adopt the current agenda as amended for the November 24th, 2020 regular meeting. Councilmember Jacobus.
And make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended for the meeting.
Councilmember Legban.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Public hearings. Item 2. Resolution 2020-230, authorizing the conditional use permit for retail sales in General Industrial District, 409 South Main Street. This time we'll have staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Brad Newton, City Administrator. I'm filling in for Jennifer. She's home recovering. This resolution is for a Cuban grocery store on South Main. Currently, it's in the BID district, so it's Business Improvement District, but it's still in the downtown zone downtown. This type of use is not allowed in that, and so we have to do a conditional use for the industrial district to allow this. So Planning Commission approved this the other night.
Can everybody hear him out there? I see some of you straining. Just
yeah, well, it's going to echo over there, probably on that speaker, because we can't really do much. I mean, this is the sacrifice we make. It's either good on Zoom or marginal in here. So it's better now on Zoom. So.
any other comments for staff? This time we'll open the public hearing. Any comments from the public? We'll close the public hearing. Any comments from council? Councilmember Jacobus.
I just had a few questions. I get it that this is going to be an allowable use with, conditional use permit. I was just curious, is this one a purchase building? The person who is doing this, are they purchasing the building? Do you know?
I doubt it.
And how long has this building been vacant?
Anybody know?
Is
I
this
have no
part of the
idea.
old Christensen buildings?
It's next to DJ's, so it's a little bit further south, next to the bar there.
I don't recall a business being in there since I've moved here.
I think you're right.
Believe it or
It's
not,
been a
it's
long
been 5
time.
years. So is it got to come up to code? Is there any remodeling
That
being
would-
done on what's the status of that?
Yeah, that would be the building department upstairs would have to check the compliance with code. This is just the zoning. So they'll have to get a zoning, they'll have to get a building permit.
Do you know if one's been issued yet?
I don't.
Is that a condition of this or
No.
that being part of it? I don't have an issue with it. I think it'd be a good use for that area. And it's actually a needed use. I think it'd fit in with the neighborhood. So I'm taking no issue with it. I'm just asking these questions because I was asked and I didn't know how to answer it. So thank you. I guess, is Dave able to answer that or Don?
Dave is upstairs. If he's hearing us, he can probably come down, or Dave, you can just go on Zoom if you want. If he knows. I don't think he knows though either. I'd be surprised if he would know any more about it. Jennifer's just at home, so she doesn't feel well enough to Zoom
But
in.
if there are permits issued or needed, that would be in Don Simon's
That would be in
department?
Don Simon. The building inspection would do that.
And they're just-
Councilman Ellis.
Building is at 409 South Main, which would be across the railroad tracks, not
Correct.
within the BID.
You-
And not, so it's not, close
That's
to
true.
Jay's.
That's right. It's not in the BID. It's just in the industrial, it's just in the downtown, whatever, district. So
On the south side of the tracks.
south side of the tracks, you're correct.
Any other comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution
Oh, Mike's got a
2020-230.
question.
Councilman Coons, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to throw out a couple brief comments on this. Just a little history of the area. When I went to work for Arps Ready Mix in 1977, the building adjacent to the north on the corner was a grocery store at that time. I believe the name of it was the Cornhusker Grocery. Because I can remember stopping there in my truck, and running and getting snacks and pop. So it is kind of beneficial to the neighborhood. And then also on the applicant, my latest, she was an employee of mine briefly last summer, and I just wanted to vouch for her character. She was an outstanding individual, and I would not hesitate to hire her back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments from council? Councilman Yerger,
I don't have any comments. I was just going to make a motion.
go ahead.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-230.
Councilman Legban,
Yeah, we'll second that.
cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Thank you, Mike.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Next item up is 24. Resolution to require mask mandate for all per Governor Ricketts DHM and allowing for consideration of being more restrictive in that regardless of time, any and all patrons and workers shall wear masks in any and all places of business applicable to all age 3 or older. This is a council member Jacobus item. I commend her for bringing it forward. Truly the situation, not only in Fremont, but the entire state has certainly escalated, and cases have escalated, and the actual COVID-19 is a whole lot different today than it was 6 weeks ago. And truly, this is something that council needs to deal with. Unfortunately, we won't be able to handle it through a resolution. It'd have to be handled through an actual ordinance, and Susan has talked through that, and we understand that. And truly, the Board of Health will come together probably first, I hope, because they will make the recommendation to direct legal to move forward with an ordinance that
Mayor's muted.
very closely to what's going on in other communities. And then at that point, it can come back to council for approval. But that's probably the route it needs to go, but I'm going to turn it over to Susan so she can, since it's actually her resolution.
I'll start off by asking for a motion to receive that you have all. Am I on speaker? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. I was afraid I was eating the mic earlier. I'm just going to hand this out and ask for a motion to receive.
Thank you. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to receive.
And Susan, is that second?
Sorry. Yes.
Councilman Jensen was the first. Cast your votes.
Councilman Coons.
Councilman Coons. He really can't get it, so.
I might add that he received it by email, just like all of council did, and we are formally receiving it now. Mike, you've already received it by email. And you should have had it by 1 a.m. this morning, actually. Can you raise your finger in a thumbs up if you got it?
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Go ahead, Susan.
There's many reasons why I initiated this. One, I was asked to, and I was challenged to find any business that had 100% employee and customer abiding by not only social distancing, but by mask. And looking around this room, that's basically what I found when I went in and out of the stores. I see 3 people sitting less than 6 feet apart across the room. And I see randomly sporadic over here for people that aren't from the same household. And that's your prerogative. However, our numbers have been on the rise. They rose over 1,200 within 2 weeks. And yes, and from Mr. Steve Ray, and appreciated your concerns as well as a gentleman named Scott, that were the only 2 pushbacks that I received, both personally and by phone call or email. And that pushback was that masks don't solve anything. You're correct. It's not the resolution, but it's part of the solution. It will slow the spread. It will reduce the amount of air particulates that are there through anybody sneezing, coughing, any drainage, anything. Because when we speak, we all spit, like it or not. And when I had braces, I understood that quite a bit. There were 976 additional cases in the hospitals. We're now down to 971 as of Monday. The prior week we were at 978. So 978 last week, 976 Sunday, 971. Unfortunately, that include a few deaths for the reduction rate in the hospitals. In Lincoln, there's 176 as of today in the hospital. And the Bryan saw 124 cases. CHI hospitals had 330. Omaha, the patients are basically at a flat. They're not increasing. What's happening is the mortality has been somewhat reduced and the severity. Omaha's got now a 30% positivity rate. It's disappointing that Fremont has a higher one of over 34% positivity. Again, this isn't a solution. It's just part of it.
Susan, try and talk into it a little closer.
I'm sorry. I'm nervous about not even having a mask on with so many people in the room. This is a resolution to have a declaration that we do have a pandemic, that it is something we need to address, that this does need to go to the Board of Health for consideration to approve or disapprove, to make some kind of a recommendation for or against an ordinance for a mandate that has some teeth in it. And I understand there's some opposition to that. But once Governor Pete Ricketts had decided not to have a statewide mask mandate, communities started taking the initiative on their own, which included Gretna, Hastings, Holdridge, Kearney, which was a big surprise to many, Ralston, La Vista, even a small town south of Schuyler called David City that has just under 2,500 people. And that was implemented as of Saturday because their mayor implemented an executive order. This resolution is to go before the Board of Public Health for their consideration and help craft with legal a formal ordinance similar to and not unlike what other communities have had. The resolution I wrote, I will read very briefly. Resolution of City Council of the City of Fremont to declare the spread of COVID-19 virus a public health emergency, to declare a temporary mask mandate requiring an acceptable face covering to be worn adequate enough to cover the nose and mouth of all persons over 3 years of age, which was suggested to be modified to 5 years of age, who are able to remove face covering without assistance, worn at all times while on enclosed premises open to the general public, included but not limited to educational institutions unless engaged in athletic activity or isolated by barriers such as plexiglass from others or others not part of the individual's household, and to require signage to be posted no smaller than 8.5 by 11 and visible to all persons, including workers, customers, and visitors, instructing them to wear face coverings, to request the Fremont Board of Public Health to convene an emergency meeting to consider a community mandatory mask mandate by ordinance for the city of Fremont, to request the Board of Public Health make a formal recommendation to the City Council regarding the same on or before December 8th, 2020. And that date is a magical date because that is the first meeting in December. And that is when our mayor-elect Spellerberg and the other council members will take their seats. Because right now you have 4 lame ducks, including myself, that will not be part of passing this ordinance should that come back to your table. This resolution shall not be applicable to the courts of law, public utilities that are closed to general public, federal, state, county, or city governing bodies while convened in an official capacity, persons immediately consuming beverage or food while seated in a bar or restaurant, persons engaged in activity or occupations preventing the wearing of face covering, persons speaking to an audience in distance greater than 6 feet from others, persons with verified medical conditions or disability making it unreasonable to wear a face covering. And there are several whereases there. It cites state statute, and that we do currently have directed health measures that we follow. That was signed on November 13th, 2020, and put into action or effective as of November 16th, 2020. And there are copies of that on the state website. Just know this isn't a cure, but it will slow the transmission. If one doesn't wear a mask and he speaks to somebody with a mask, that person can transmit 70% probability. If the one wearing the mask speaks to somebody without a mask, that transmission rate gets cut down to 5%. If both parties are wearing a mask, that transmission rate is cut down to less than 2%, which I think is a win. It isn't just about a surge capacity. It's also about our healthcare workers. We do have empty floors. We do have additional beds, not only in Fremont, but also in Omaha and Lincoln. The problem is our staffing. This is personal. We have a councilman who is now, no offense, Mike, been tested positive for COVID. And the gentleman seated to my right, Mr. Lakeman, and his wife had a horrible bout with COVID in which they're still not fully out of the woods. My daughter-in-law and her family, my sons, and their 3 little girls are now quarantined because of exposure. They wore their masks, but things that they had in their possession and people they are around that did not. It's real, and it's in our neighborhoods, and it's in our families. I would just hate to think that our celebrations and our lack of mask mandates or social distancing is going to lead to funerals when it comes to Christmas. So I'm asking you that you consider this, and I take it that some people feel this political in nature, but it is not. It's personal because I've been involved in the healthcare field in one way or another for over 30 years, and it is personal. I've lost close acquaintances and friends to COVID under the age of 50 with no pre-existing health conditions because they're trauma junkies. They ride the helicopters to save other people, and they ride the ambulances. And it's happening across our state. And I think this is just one tool that we can do to minimize the spread. Thank you.
Any comments from council before we go to public comment? Councilman Legman?
Yeah, since I was brought in, I'll talk a little bit. I hate the government have to mandating anything. It goes against everything I believe in with government. But after what I went through and almost losing my life, almost losing my wife, if I can help prevent one person from getting this, I think it's worth it.
Any other comments from council? Councilman Jensen?
Yes, I'll echo what's been said. My wife works as a phlebotomist at the hospital in Fremont. Over the last 24 hours, I've heard from 2 local doctors, a local nurse, and a local physical therapist, all begging me to support this. This is a good first step. There's no bite of law on this. This puts it in front of the people it should be put in front of to come back to the next council and decide where we go from there.
Any other comments from council? Mr. Marvin.
Okay. My name is Larry Marvin at 635 North Main Street, Fremont. And the issue that I have is face coverings or face masks. One, I do not like Big Brother ordering me around, but what is worse is when Big Brother is deceiving me for what purpose? 2, this summer, I attended a group get-together at John C. Fremont Park, and one of our attendees had on a very expensive-looking face mask with a black knob on the front, and he was not socially distancing from us. Well, on TV, the doctors say that that type of mask protects the wearer, but not those of us around him or her, because that black knob is an exhaust valve that lets his or her breath escape and pollute the air if he or she has the coronavirus. So thanks a lot for wearing something protecting yourself and at the same time contaminating me and others. For this, I condemn this use of the word face mask, and I encourage all Americans to use face coverings, triple thickness or triple layers of them. And for anyone who cannot afford to buy a mask at 5 or 20 times the price that masks cost before the pandemic, you should be permitted to wear a dish towel, bandana, scarf, or cut up a t-shirt and triple fold it and tie it behind your head if you do not sew. This afternoon on TV, they said that if 75% of us would wear masks all the time, then we could defeat this virus. So from 67 to 75% shows us that 8% more of us in compliance, we can defeat this virus. And 67% is if a third are not wearing them, that's 2/3 of us are wearing them. That's not scientific. So I support facial coverings mask ordinance. So for those who contaminate us by having this ordinance, the police can arrest them for criminal trespass when not obeying the signs to our business or to public places. And I have a handout for each of the council members.
Yep. We'll take a motion to receive. Councilmember Jacobus,
I would make a motion to receive.
is there a second? Councilman Legman,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Is there any other public comment?
Hello, my name is Allie French, 4213 North 172nd Street. I'm actually from Omaha, Nebraska, but I have a friend who's moving out here and I came to speak on her behalf. I feel it's important to share with you guys that I would be considered one of the people who medically cannot wear a mask, and I don't feel comfortable disclosing why for personal reasons, but I do also want to talk about my husband because I feel this is important. He is an immunocompromised patient. He was re-diagnosed with testicular cancer back in January and has undergone extensive chemo treatment where he was by himself all day long going through his chemo, and I was not allowed to join him because people were uncertain of what this virus was bringing with it back in February, March, April, May, so on and so forth. He also went through an RPLND, which for those of you who don't know, they cut him down his belly and removed 46 lymph nodes from his abdomen, which for a lot of people makes them immunocompromised for the rest of their lives. Now, for him, he is quite fortunate. He has a know-it-all for a wife. And I know how to take care of him. I know what foods to feed him. I know that to keep him from getting sick, he needs to avoid sugar. I know that to help him stay healthy, that we need to do a low carb, high fat diet, that we need to make sure we're not vitamin D deficient. And none of these things are talked about. The reason I bring this up is because we never wear masks. We can't, but we also choose not to. For the simple fact that masks have been shown over the last several decades, many decades, since like 1918, when the Spanish flu hit and they wore masks, that masks are the #1 killer because they cause bacterial pneumonia. And it was the #1 reason for death during the Spanish flu. And what are we seeing now, guys? A rise in pneumonia cases. People who are sick and can't respond to treatments because their lungs are inflamed from wearing masks and rebreathing their CO2 and viral debris all day long. Masks have been shown to increase, not decrease, the risk of infection ×3. It was found that people have a 3 times the risk of developing a respiratory illness if they wear a mask. In the first randomized clinical trial on the effects of a cloth mask, scientists reported that the results caution against the use of cloth masks. This is an important finding to inform occupational health and safety. Moisture retention, reuse of cloth masks, and poor filtration may result in increased risk of infections. Wearing masks increases your CO2 blood oxygen levels to unsafe levels. We've also seen studies of surgeons who wear masks during surgery, and even after an hour in a room supplied with additional oxygen in a sterile environment, their CO2 blood oxygen levels still decrease, and it may actually be a contributing cause to medical malpractice being the third leading cause of death in the United States. OSHA trainers and PPE experts explain the risk of ineffectiveness and long-term mask wearing. For children, all of their organs are metabolically active. And in order for children to have proper development and not experience brain and organ damage, they need 100% of their oxygen. At what point is it okay for you guys to allow children to have brain damage? We're really just going to decide 5 is the magical number? Everybody 5 and older deserves to have brain damage. That's just wonderful. Anyway, I hope I can hand each one of these info cards out to you guys, and I'll wrap it up from there. Thank you.
I would take a motion to receive. Councilman Yerger,
Make a motion to receive the documents.
Councilman Legban.
And I will second that.
We need like 9 or 10. Thank you. Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Councilmember Bechtel didn't record your vote. Thank you. Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Is there any other public comment?
I'm Linda Spagnati, 321 East Military, also a business owner, 520 North Main. And I understand the feelings involved in wanting to create a mask mandate. However, I would like to point out that cities that have mask mandates, counties that have mask mandates, in comparison to counties that don't, for example, comparing Douglas County to Sarpy County, there is no discernible difference in infection rate among those populations. You can get that information directly from those counties' websites where they're giving that. I would also like to mention that mask mandates do not allow people to wear the masks correctly. I mean, they allow them to, but they don't control that. Councilwoman Jacobus, I stopped counting after number 20th time that you touched your mask in your face before handing out the papers that then went to everybody on the council. Yeah, you did not use that lovely hand sanitizer that you have in front of you between the touchings of your mask. I get that it's there. It's a lovely prop, just like your mask is a lovely prop that you put on after the meeting started at 7, but you did not have it on beforehand. When I witnessed you and Councilman Jensen lean behind the plexiglass to exchange a comment. So they're not the end all and be all. I do understand the feelings behind it. I do understand this is a real thing. I also have sincere problems with any government entity coming to a private business and saying, this is how you need to run it. I absolutely respect any business that decides to mandate masks in their business. They have the right to do that. I, as a consumer, have the right to either respect that and be a patron of their business, or I have the right to go somewhere else. I don't have the right to go and tell them how to run their business because I disagree with how they do it. That's not okay. That's not America. That's not how we do things. I understand that people may not be comfortable going into a business that's not mandating masks. I respect that too. Our small business is currently not mandating masks, and we do serve some people who are nervous about that, but they also need the service that we provide. We are more than happy to accommodate them after hours, outside, whatever it takes. We want the flexibility to do that. We also serve customers who are disabled and who have issues keeping a mask on, with understanding how to do that. They deserve to have their bicycle fixed or whatever they may need with that as well. We don't feel like we should be in a position to shame them when they come in. We believe that we, as a business owner, should set whatever rules and standards for our business that follow within the confines of our society that are appropriate. Again, a mask, while it may feel good, it is not a solution to a virus. They've been around for longer than mankind has been around. They will be here after we're gone. We just have to try to do the best we can and support people. You'd be better off passing a resolution mandating kindness. It's not something that anybody is against. It's also something that you can't mandate to people. When my business does well, I'm not buying you a steak. You don't have anything to do with my business. You didn't put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. You haven't invested your money in it or your time. When you make rules that may make it difficult for me to have a successful business, you're not bringing food to put on my table and feed my kids. You're not putting shoes on their feet. You're not buying the supplies that they need. I, as a business owner, have to make those decisions. If I make a decision not to mask in our business and that costs me business, then it's up to me to reevaluate that. That's where I stand. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Julie.
Julie Hindmarsh, 2015 Bramblewood. I have already written my comments to all of the council members, and I would just like to add that this pandemic is like a racing freight train, and our hospital is being overwhelmed. At Rotary in the last month, we heard from two renowned doctors, Dr. James Lawler and Dr. Suxdorf from Fremont, saying that they were in favor of mask mandates and surprised we didn't have one before now. We need to put all the barricades in front of the racing train of the pandemic that we can, and having a mask mandate would be one of those, as well as social distancing and frequently washing hands and no crowded spaces, the 3 C's. I am concerned with the urgency of the need to slow the virus. And I would ask you that if there is any way that is quicker, such as an executive order, to recommend the use of masks, that you take whatever would be the most urgent means to help stop the virus. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Tricia. Sorry.
Yes, this is Tricia Mettinger, 750 West Linden Avenue. I just wanted to point out that we are. What's that?
No, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Tricia
Yes.
Mettinger, 750 West Linden Avenue. I just wanted to point out that we're having our children wear masks at school for 8 hours a day. And it is a very good point to prove that there has been no community, as what you call it, spread through the schools due to the masks being worn. If we can have our children wearing masks for that long, why is it that adults can't do that? You're expecting kids to wear them all day. Throughout the day with school, there should be no reason that adults can't stand up and do what's right and wear masks. It's going to help stop spread. It's one tool to use. Yes, we need to do hand washing. We need to do sanitizing. We need to do all those things. Care workers are begging you to do something. We need to do something as a community. We need to come together and work together. And if we can work, it's a pandemic and we need to make this work as a it's not you as an individual, it's everybody. I understand some people can't wear masks, and that's, something that person needs to, if we're all wearing masks and that one person isn't wearing masks, their chance of getting COVID is way down to where if none of us are wearing masks. But I just wanted to point out that there's no spread through the schools because everybody there is wearing masks. As far as Mr. Shepard has said, there has been no spread from one student or staff to another student or staff. So I just wanted to use that as an example. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I have a little time left. Am I allowed to say one more thing?
No, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Gregory Carmen, 67 South Maple. I have a good neighbor who just spent 2 weeks in the ICU, and I talked to him just this afternoon, and he's still feeling the effects of this. And he's, like he said, he has to recover day by day, one step at a time. And I personally know of 5 more friends of mine that have tested for it and are in quarantine. And I guess what I want to say is we have seatbelt laws that people don't agree with, but they put on their seatbelts. We have helmet laws. I don't ride a motorcycle, but it's statewide, and motorcycle riders wear their helmets, although they don't approve of it. This is only going to be a temporary deal, hopefully. And next spring, we won't have to worry about this. I don't have a problem with a mask. I'll do business with whoever I feel comfortable with. And those who I don't feel comfortable with, I'll find someone else. But this is only going to be temporary, and people need to realize that. This isn't a big deal. So I encourage the council to at least consider this and pass it on to whoever will be next to decide it. Thank you.
Okay, please keep your comments to yourself. Go ahead. You're up. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bill Spignati, 520 North Main Street, Bad Dog Bikes, Bicycle Sales and Service. A little confusion going on here. You guys can make a mandate for city buildings all day long. Go ahead. You got walk in the city building, I have to wear a mask, so be it. In my private business, you're not going to make a mandate telling me to wear a mask. You're not going to do it. So there's a lot of confusion going on. Make your mandate for your city buildings. Don't do it for my private business. You don't have the authority. You don't have the, you don't have it. Thanks a lot.
Dr. McKnight.
This is Dr. Thomas McKnight. I'm 4119 North Summers Avenue. I think the science is clear and the CDC has spoken strongly about masks. I think there's no confusion and no arguing the mask helping the situation. In fact, in a recent study in Kansas, counties that were adjacent to each other that had masks had a 6% reduction in cases, and there was a 100% increase in cases in unmasked counties. I would again speak to the medical community. Our nursing staff is worn out. We're short on staff. Physicians are wearing out. The medical community is exhausted. And, this is long overdue. And as soon as we can get this passed, the better. I would echo Julie's remarks that waiting 2 weeks, moving it to the Board of Health, or whatever the next step is, that's going to cost us how many lives and how many unfortunate situations like some of you have spoke to. So as a spokesman for the medical community myself, highly recommend a mask mandate urgently. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any comment from the council? Councilmember Bechtel.
Yes. I wear a mask all day, and I also pay attention to
new research all day, and it still seems that masks may work. It seems like mask mandates really don't. It seems like places that are doing mandates are still getting walloped. Germany, Italy, New York. You know, talking to somebody about this, so my favorite comment that I've heard so far was, well, I've been arrested for everything else. I might as well get arrested for not wearing a mask. I think that I think that the evidence is still mixed on how effective mandates are. So it's not something that I'm in favor of. I would like to go through the proper channels. A little bit unclear with the wording here, but I am not going to support this motion tonight.
Councilman Ellis.
Wow, this has hit Fremont harder and stronger than I ever thought it was going to be. This is the hardest decision or hardest topic that I've had since I've been a councilman. First and foremost, Linda, I have to acknowledge your mandate for kindness. My wife's, I told my wife I wanted to do that. She thought I'd be laughed out of the city council, but that's what tears at my gut, is when I see unkind acts on people not wearing masks. And, you know, people, we've got so many things in this world that we can be negative about. And I think it's time for us to choose to be positive about something. There's too much in this life that we need to cherish and not worry about other people. That actually, you know, individual responsibility that's what America was founded on. So there's just a lot of things here that I want to kind of touch base on. Is how much hate this has created. And I hate that. You know, you guys knew in the campaign, I was against signs in yards because it taught people to hate one another. And I hated that. So I really do think we need to look at a mandate for kindness, because we as citizens of Fremont need to start learning how to behave ourselves and to be friendly towards one another, no matter what. I'm curious, you know, I've been following this a lot, the statistics. A lot of people, I get really upset when people throw the word, it's science. Why don't you believe science? To tell you the truth, science has become so politicized that you can't believe anything that you hear or read anymore. And so then you have to rely on your common sense, because if you can't believe what's being said in the media, you can't believe what's being said on TV, the newspaper. You know, I'm a very logically minded, intelligent individual. So I do believe in science, but right now, science is not, they've not proven to me one way or another whether this is the proper thing to do. Dr. Fauci said at the very beginning of this, don't wear masks. And now he's saying wear masks. This is a gentleman that we all admired for a long time, and now he switched. Why did he switch? Even his thesis that he wrote back, the lady represented it about the 1918 pandemic caused pneumonia more than it did the pandemic. So again, science has become politicized, and I hate that. Everything in this world, this America that we live in now, has become politicized. And I think we as a city need to stop that and start worrying about kindness, and start worrying about our neighbor, and start worrying about, you know, what I can do as an individual, not what you can do to be a better person, but what I can do to be a better person. So at what cost is this happening? You know, again, I don't know what statistics to read, but I see it in people's faces. I see it. This is causing extreme amount of stress on people. That the out of work, the do I have a job? Can't be with my relatives over Thanksgiving. I believe it's taken an impact on our society on drug abuse, domestic violence, suicide attempts. So we as a people need to stop and think, where are we going with this? Because yes, masks are a pretty simple solution, but is it really going to solve this issue? Or is it going to be just another piece of stone that's put on somebody's shoulder that they have to carry around, worrying about, is somebody going to point me out in a crowd and start yelling at me? And I've seen that happen already, and that should not happen. So the last thing I'm going to wrap up here in my minute and a half is we've been told by our council and Councilman Legman, you've always used this argument that we have been instructed by our council that this resolution is not the way to go. This is essentially, there's no meat to it. There's no anything. And so I believe that this ought to be tabled tonight because there is no meat here. There's nothing here that can actually get the job done. It actually needs to come through our Board of Public Health. And if they recommend it, then it needs to come to us as a council. And but right now we've already showed our cards. We've already told the Public Board of Health, hey, we want a mandate, or at least that's what we're telling them. So I believe we have to pull back, let the Board of Public Health make the decision what they want to do or what they want to recommend to us. And then from there, as a council, we take that as a recommendation. And then from there, we can go forward. And just because one city does it or another city does it, doesn't mean we have to do the same thing. We can come up with other solutions to this problem. We don't have to mask or mimic another city's solution. We can actually come up with our very own solution to this. So again, I would recommend, and I'm going to let other council members talk, but this resolution does not do anything for us as a city. It only causes more anger and grief towards one another. And I think we need to do this the proper way, the way that our city attorney told us that needs to take place. And so from there, I will release the mic.
Councilman Jensen.
Mayor, can I just jump in here real quick?
Yeah.
Well, let me unmute myself, Brian. Don't worry about it. Okay. This resolution, it's my understanding it's meant to be sort of symbolic, as we've advised. It wouldn't actually be enforceable for any type of mask mandate. But if this resolution is going to be considered and passed tonight, there are about 3 changes I would recommend making. Number 1 is after the first semicolon, where it says to declare, I would strike declare and change that to consider. Similar to that, the second change would be when it says unless engaged, or when it says to require signage to be posted, I would change that to consider requiring signage to be posted. And then where it says this resolution shall not be applicable to, I would strike that and change it to the considerations of this resolution may not apply to.
Okay, Councilman Jensen.
Just to Councilman Eltz's point, to say right now, well, let's just forget about this and everybody will be happy again, is not going to happen. I guarantee you there's going to be at least as many people upset if we don't do something as if we do something. That's, I guess, my biggest frustration is all this is it shouldn't be on our table at all. This should have happened months and months and months ago at the highest state level and at the highest federal level. They kicked it down to us, and shame on them. It falls on those 2 people in my mind. It shouldn't be here at all, but we're left with it.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I would make a motion to amend this resolution per our legal counsel, because I totally agree, because my intent when I first wrote it was quite lengthy, and believe it or not, I cut the wording down. For me, this was huge. But I do have in there to address Mr. Councilman Ellis's, that it does state to consider, to request the Fremont Board of Public Health to convene an emergency meeting to consider community mandatory mask mandate by ordinance. It's not telling that they have to say yes or no. It's simply that they will bring their recommendation back to the council. And I totally agree with our attorney and his advice to amend this. So based on what his comments were, I would make a motion to amend it as stated.
Is there a second? Councilman Jensen, or Councilman Yerger. You're actually up, okay. Councilman Jensen.
I will second that.
The motion is second. Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
The motion carries 6-2, Mayor.
Okay, is there still comment from council? Councilman Yerger.
Well, I just wanted to add to the commentary after listening to a lot of both sides of the discussion and to let everyone know, I got lots of communication from the public on this matter. Emails, both sides, phone calls, both sides. So clearly it is not a straightforward situation at all. I do agree with some of the things that have been said tonight, though, and I guess, I would have said them first, but I'm going to reiterate my support for those things. I think this, if there's a recommendation to be had, it should have come directly from the Board of Public Health. I'm concerned that we would send a directive over to the Board of Public Health with a pre-vote that says we're in favor of something because we sent it to you. I think it should be the other way around. They should evaluate and come with a recommendation. And if they think they have the case for one, they should make it. We're doing this backwards. So that's kind of my first concern. I do think, perhaps because this is such a safety concern that members of the public, myself included, need to be personally responsible for safety, for yourself and for those that you would come in contact with if you choose to be out in the public. That's only fair because everybody has the right and deserves the right to be out in public and to be safe. So but it is a matter of personal responsibility, I believe, rather than government mandate. A community directive in that regard that says, or that, businesses post on their doors that say masks are required for entry. If you don't follow it, don't come in, or they're recommended. And so in advance that if you enter, you may or may not encounter someone that's not wearing a mask. That gives the business owners the opportunity to control their business, as was articulated tonight. And that's kind of the side that I fall down on, I think, relative to not being overly governmental, controlling what business establishments do in their businesses, because they've worked hard to create those. My other concern is community directive versus ordinance. Once we put an ordinance in place, ordinances are municipal code and they must be enforced. Somebody's going to be held accountable if they are not enforced. A lot of municipalities have put ordinances in place, I understand, and they are not enforcing them. I do not believe we have the law enforcement resource to answer the calls to ticket people for not wearing a mask. And I see Chief Elliott in the back of the room, and I don't know if he'll speak to this issue, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't have the resources to answer the calls to do enforcement. And if in fact we're going to write this into city code, that's going to be required because city code says the administration shall enforce the codes of the city of Fremont. So if we codify this, that's exactly what's going to have to happen. If we don't, then it's not any different than if we just had a community directive that says, please be respectful and be safe for yourself, be safe for the other members of the public. Don't go out in groups if you don't have to. Don't go to the store with your children if you don't have to, et cetera, to help elicit all of the constraint that we can have. And that's the kind of balance that I got, kind of pro and con. And I got a pretty even balance from the public and the calls that I received and emails that I received. Pro and con, good arguments on both sides. I understand, which makes it kind of difficult in that regard. But I do think in large measure, this is a matter of personal responsibility and one that really fell to the Board of Public Health to be the recommenders here rather than for us to be going over to ask them. And so I think we're out of order in what we're attempting to do here. I don't know how the other communities approach this and whether or not that's the way they did it. They had their Board of Public Health come with a recommendation and then they tooled it up, or whether or not they took the action themselves. But I know the prospective mayor has been on record in the paper already with regards to positioning on this. I don't know where other new council members stand relative to this. But I kind of fall on the same side of, I think this should come from the Board of Public Health and they should self-initiate. And if they're going to bring this back to the next council meeting, first meeting of December, then it should be requisite upon them to do so rather than for this council to direct them to do so, and then they'll go through the steps to do it anyway. That's what my comments for this evening.
The challenge and the Board of Health is really the mayor, the city council president, Dr. Richard Seitz, Chief Elliott, and then Fire Chief Burnt attends that meeting as well. The resolution hit before before the process. I've followed several communities thus far. Some started just the way we're starting right now. It was an idea by a council person. They brought it forward. Then there was a conversation, and it was kicked back to the Board of Health. The Board of Health made a recommendation, yay or nay, but gave direction to legal. I wholeheartedly agree with Councilman Yerger. We do not have anything in our code that would trigger enforcement. And I do know that the challenge for the chief is going to be that piece, the actual physical enforcement. I've had multiple calls, probably more than I've had in a long time in regards to an item. And truly, the enforcement piece, if you can't enforcement, it's just a feel good. And that's truly something that is possibly important, but you got to be able to figure out a way to trigger the enforcement piece as well. And I know in Omaha and some of the other communities, they've struggled with enforcement to a point where in a lot of places it's not happening. So I think the Board of Health does need to visit this. At the end of the day, they'll come back together and can come together relatively quick and bring a recommendation back to legal, and legal could determine a direction for the new council, or if it needs to happen sooner, it could be this council with a special meeting as well. So Chief Elliott.
Jeff Elliott, Chief of Police. I want to remind the council about the police department's manpower situation. Currently, we have 38.5 police officer billets. Of those 38.5, 9 of them currently are unavailable for duty. A quarter of the entire department is not available. And that is before we have any COVID cases, which we seem to have about 1 a week right now. We will do whatever the council directs us to do. If the council wants us to enforce this mandate, we will do our best to go out there and enforce it. However, I want to remind the council of the manpower situation and the problems that we have just doing our job currently as compared to adding additional duties. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Councilman Legman.
After hearing everything, I do agree that the Public Health Board really should make a recommendation first. And then we can go from there, but I think they should make the recommendation first.
Any other comments by council? Councilman Yerger.
I've already spoken, so I only intend to follow up on Councilmember. Did Councilmember McLean want to say something? Okay. Then my only reason for raising my hand to speak again is to entertain Councilmember Ellis's recommendation to create a motion to continue this item to the next meeting, which should give adequate time for the Board of Public Health to do their investigation and make a recommendation to bring it back to the next meeting, which is going to be no different than we'd be doing anyway, but it follows the right protocols, I believe, as to how you go about doing this in the first place. So I make a motion to continue this item to the next meeting.
Is there a second? Councilman Legman.
I will second that.
Cast your vote.
Coons votes no.
Motion carries 5-3.
Moving on. Next item is the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council, will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Is there any items either from the public or from council to be removed from the consent agenda at this time? Councilman Yerger.
I'd like to pull item 4 minutes. I have an adjustment to the minutes.
Item 4. Any other items? Councilmember Jacobus.
I'd like to have item number 10, just so we can have an idea of if they're present and congratulate them for coming on board.
Any other items? Any from the public? I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 3, 5 through 9, and 11 through 16. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 4 and 10.
Councilman Legman.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 4, dispense with and approve November 10, 2020 City Council minutes. Councilmember Yerger.
My only reason for asking this to be discussed was with regards to the recording of the minutes for members present. It indicates that Mr. Coons was present. He was on the meeting via Zoom for the same reasons he's on Zoom this time based on medical directive. And I think the minutes should reflect that rather than as though he's present in the room.
Is there a second?
I would actually agree with that. Needs to be in the minutes. So.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I'll second that motion to amend.
And hopefully that was a motion, Brad. So we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now I would take a motion in regards to the amended minutes with approval of November 10th, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Councilman Yerger.
Make a motion to approve the amended minutes for October 27th, 2020.
Is there a second? Councilman Legman.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 10. Move to appoint Jackson Shepard, Christopher Williamson as police officers per mayor recommendation. Basically received the report from the Civil Service Commission was able to review the resumes and the test results from the candidates. Have had discussion with the chief, and I would make a motion to appoint or bring forward the names of Jackson Shepard and Christopher Williamson as police officers per the Civil Service Commission recommendation and recommended as per the mayor. Councilmember Jacobus.
Where are they from, and have they currently served? Are these going to be new personnel that goes to
Do
Grand
we have any
Island?
of them here, Jeff?
I live in Omaha.
Can you state your name?
Christopher Williamson. Sorry.
Thank you, Christopher.
And I live in Omaha. We are planning on moving here to Fremont. My wife has been doing a whole lot of research. But background wise, not in law enforcement, but I have like police officer, not in police officer background, but I've been in law enforcement areas. So
Thank you. And thank you for stepping up and trying to fill the seat.
yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Councilman Bechtel.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to tell you, Chris, you actually have to give a 5-minute speech on why you want to be a police officer. So if you can, you can go ahead and present that. I'm just kidding. I'll approve this. It's good to have you on.
Any other comments? Councilmember Jacobus.
Was that a motion, Councilman Bechtel? If it was, I will gladly second it, but thank you for not making the 5-minute speech.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Christopher, congratulations and welcome to Fremont.
Thank you guys very much.
Next item is unfinished business, number 17. Ordinance 5546 pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Fremont Technology Park to McGinn Holdings LLC pursuant to Nebraska law. This would be for the first reading. Staff report.
Mayor and City Council, Brian Newton, City Administrator. If you remember, we had this on the agenda at the last meeting. Unfortunately, we forgot to do first reading. So it's back on again for first reading. And so what we're asking you tonight is, and I'll explain the changes that were made, but pass it again tonight. We will hold first reading. Next meeting, then we'll ask that you waive the second and the third, and we move right to final, simply because it would be the third time that you've considered it. So it's an error on our part. We just forgot to do the reading. Based on legal advice, this is the way they prefer that we handle it. So, or unless you want to just completely waive it tonight and go first right to third reading, you're welcome to do that too.
We did introduce it. We just didn't read it.
We did introduce it. We just didn't read it. So if you look at the agreement, at the last meeting, there were a couple of items that were discussed. One was in the price, and you can see we've changed the price to that $32,446.90. We also changed the refund to $12,192.72. So we brought that up consistent where we had in the past. We also added the 3.2 jobs. Again, remember we did one earlier for TJ Bird. We required one job. This is 4 lots. If you calculate it on the per acre, that comes up to 3.2 jobs. Seth was fine with doing that. He's going to add certainly more than those, and so he had no issues with that. I don't think Dave Mitchell is here. I don't think we did anything else. I think those were the 2 substantive changes that we made. And so it's essentially the same thing as you had last time. So I'll take any questions, or Dave.
Any questions for staff? Comments from the public?
Hello, Gary Clark, President and CEO of Greater Fremont Development Council, 1005 East 23rd Street, Fremont, Nebraska. I am just here just to put on record that the Greater Fremont Development Council is in total support of this project. We're excited to see yet another business that's in town and expanding, and we just look forward to seeing this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Any other comments from the public? Comments from council, Councilman Yerger.
Well, I wasn't quick enough on the draw before you went to public comment. So now are we down to these are our second round of comments?
It's just council comments, so.
Because I have several questions, some that will be directed towards staff and I don't know if the applicant's present or not, but I do have some questions that might get to be an applicant question as well. So one of my first questions, and I don't know, Brian, if these will be directed to you or others on staff, so you can direct them accordingly, but I'm not sure exactly what the going rate for city property throughout the city has been of late. And I'm interested in knowing what that might be as it's related to improved versus unimproved infrastructure property owned by the city. Because this is definitely infrastructure improved property versus other sales that we've had that might well have been unimproved sales. Secondly, and to that end, this business park has already been partially paid for by a taxpayer expense because infrastructure LB 840 funds were used to do this project. And I think if those LB 840 funds were taken into account, the price of this property wasn't $1.6 million. It's probably almost double that because I think it was $1 million of infrastructure or so that was put in according to some of the old documents that I saw today. And so that would put this property on a base price, not at $30-some thousand, but probably much higher than that for the infrastructure improvements that are carried within it. I'm concerned, and in contrast, another area that, paid for infrastructure and put it in their lot expense was Ritz Lake. They wanted infrastructure brought up to their lake subdivision and they paid for it. And that's why their lots are so expensive. And I'm not sure why that wouldn't hold true for city owned property as well. I'm interested in understanding the specific type of business that is actually going to be going on here as to whether or not it is warehousing or something other than warehousing, because I'm not familiar enough with the business, but there's some municipal code issues that are of concern to me if in fact this is warehousing. And even if it's warehousing in a business park area, I'm hopeful that the applicant has been advised that they need a limited use permit to build what they want to build on this property. It's not qualified anything other than without a specialized permit to be in the business park, because that's how it's zoned today. I'm interested in knowing from Mr. Godeken whether or not Yeager Road or 29th Street are going to be and are designated as collector or arterial streets today. Because if they are not, that's of concern based on city code as well, because access to this property must be off of a collector or an arterial street. And I'm not sure that's in the contemplated plan either. And even if that's the case, then the setback requirements that are required for code for these particular locations, which are across from residential dwellings, requires there to be significant buffer yard, even if it meets the street requirements, which means hopefully that the owner understands that 25 feet of the property on the west side is going to be dedicated to buffer yard. And I don't know if that's been conveyed or not, but those are things that I think the applicant for purchase needs to fully understand. I'm not opposing the purchase. I just want to hopefully I'm looking out for not only the citizens of Fremont, but to make sure that the buyer is fully informed. I'm also concerned about the paragraph 20 in the real estate agreement in particular, which says that basically all infrastructure is going to be borne by the taxpayers of Fremont. That is, we're going to put in the streets, We're going to put in the sewers. We're going to put in the wastewater lines. We're going to put in the gas. We're going to put in the electric. And that's all coming at ratepayer expense, according to paragraph 20. I don't believe that's at all appropriate for us to be doing for anyone in the business park. And I think that paragraph needs to go, or needs significant modification for sure. The other thing that I'm kind of concerned about relative to the overall, we have several of these on our plate tonight, and that is that we don't use standard statistics for any of these. In some cases, we use certain values. In other cases, we use others. The calculations for the number of employees per lot is incorrect, I believe, even in this case, and it was up to 3.2, I think you just said. But the application of 31 employees over 80 lots comes out to 0.3875 people per acre, and that calculates out to 1.79 people, or 2 people at the max for this job rounded up. So I'm not sure how we came up with 3.2 jobs. And so for those kinds of inconsistencies, not only on this application, but the others that we're going to be addressing tonight, I'd like to see these all brought into some sort of congruence. And I'd like the folks that I ask questions of to respond to those so that we can get to the heart of whether or not building here is going to be appropriate given the zoning that we have. Thanks.
You want me to start? So I inherited a spreadsheet that has the costs and it has estimates for the water main, sanitary sewer, and the storm sewers, because it's our park, we're developing it, and for the streets, 29th Street, and also Jaeger. And so I took that spreadsheet, divided by the acres, came up with a 32.5 an acre. Once Dave gets done going out for bid and we get some actual cost, we'll have to update that spreadsheet on some actual costs. But right now, it includes the price of land, it includes the estimates for these improvements. And so that's the reason why, as we have done on Morningside, we will also do in this park, we will make all the infrastructure improvements, and then we will tie those costs back into the cost of lots and continue keeping that updated, because the goal is at the very end is that we will be reimbursed less the $1 million that we got from the state. So that's the ultimate goal, is that we develop this business park with no cost to city ratepayers or taxpayers. So I think I answered your question on how the price came up. If we take the $1 million, we divide it by the 80 acres, that's the 12.1. That's why we're applying it. Seth is going to add 3 jobs, 4 jobs, 5 jobs. We had 2 jobs on TJ Bird. It was council wrangling with Bird that moved that back to 1. And so you're right, if you do figure it per acre, it is 2, but you moved it back to 1. So we thought that was consistent with the rest of these. It's going to be a moot point, because the other 2 applicants that we have tonight that you'll consider are adding 15 and 40 jobs. And so we've already contacted the state. They're going to waive the $1 million return. We've now met that. As soon as you approve these land sales, the employee criteria has been met. The state will waive the $1 million. We can take that off the contingency of LB 840. And so future contracts won't have that contingency because the state's going to waive that. Yay. Yay. So Dave, do you have any?
Councilmember Jacobus.
So according to what occurred in 2009, LB 840 funds for $1,950,000 purchased the land and paid for water extension. The IT infrastructure, the dark fiber from Omaha to Fremont, plus administration costs was $985,000. That was paid for CDBG grants. The utilities put in $750,000 worth of electrical extension. We have invested in that property to date just shy of $3.7 million, which translates into more than $40,000 an acre. However, that $1 million does chunk it down, but that still is going to be in excess. And I'm kind of curious why we don't start out at taking that $3,685,000 divided by 80.6 acres that was purchased in 2009 and have that based as our starting point. And then when we have that $1 million to play with, which is that CDBG money or is that LB 840? It's being called both in the documents. It's threaded throughout as LB 840 and then finally says CDBG. I believe that's CDBG, is it not?
I don't know, Gary. I don't know. I don't know.
The document
I'm
I
not
have.
sure where it came from.
At the,
It was for the data park. It was
at
for
the time, first of all, did you say there was 900 in IT
Yeah,
or
we
in
didn't incur
fiber
any of those
costs?
The estimated cost were $975,000.
That wasn't our cost.
This is from July of 2009. That was,
So
That was the IT companies or
no one has paid anything for fiber.
No.
Fiber was zero.
zero.
We
So where did-
negotiate, no one has paid a cent
so then we
for
have,
any fiber cost whatsoever on that property. We were able to negotiate every bit of that from all of the vendors at no cost.
so this is without the administration cost of 10,000 and the 975,000.
There's absolutely no fiber cost whatsoever on that property.
So it's a mere 2.8 million on 80 acres. 'cause
I don't
that's
know.
what
I
we're
don't
now
have a
left with.
spreadsheet in front of me and I don't have those numbers. So I'll have to look at it.
The funding, when this all started, was through a CDBG grant.
There you go.
And the CDBG grant took care of 1 million even dollars.
975.
I think it says 975.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
10,000 for administration.
And so that's, that was really those dollars and it was a governor project. At that time, data parks were extremely popular and Fremont was touted as one of the main areas for a data park to come in. And that was part of the reason why we were able to court both ABV, Huntel, and Great Plains. And at the time, we used Huntel to do the design. And because of that, we were able to get both kind of negotiating against each other. And it ended up being free installation. And that was a true blessing to the city of Fremont when that happened. But at this point, the cost on that ground, the infrastructure, was basically has been done. The water's been done. That's a shovel ready piece of property. The water's there, the sewer's there, the electrical's there, the gas is there. And it was done to be shovel ready so that when a developer came to Fremont, we would have a piece of property that they could begin to build on almost immediately. And truly, that's one of the biggest advantages we have on that property is that they can get started on a project as quickly as possible. And whereas so many other parcels, when you got to look at, okay, well, what's it going to be for water and sewer to get there? And what's it going to be for gas to get there? It might take us 2 years to get it there. So this is a beautiful project and parcel of property that is very advantageous for the city of Fremont in regards to growth and development.
So how does the street get paid for? We had mentioned that had to get paved on 29th Street all the way from Yeager over to Lincoln into a cul-de-sac to extend beyond. What is the approximate cost of that?
I don't know. I'll get you my spreadsheet that I inherited that had the estimated cost. And then Dave
should have it.
Dave doesn't have that, but he'll have the bid go out here soon. And once we'll know the actual cost, we'll update those costs. But right now, all I've got is the estimated cost. So.
I think at one time the discussion is 1.2 million for that street.
Could be. I don't have it.
Including the cul-de-sac. So if that's true, then we are going to bear the cost of that, and we're also going to bear the risk of a penalty if it's not completed. I feel like we have no control over this, and I'm not sure why we're gonna do the street without assessment, or why we have to do it all right now, because we have other priority projects that need to be taken care of. I think one of them that got brought to mind once this agenda hit was still on the south side. There's some, I guess, water issues on Albie's Towing and that area down in through there that had been brought to the table by Hazebrook and still has not been addressed because we didn't have the funding. And we're going to fund this area with some sporadic fill-in. And I don't know how to resolve that, because won't we have to also include additional paving going north on, what is that street, Lincoln? That hasn't been brought into that. We're going to end up having to pay farther to the north on Lincoln.
So the plan currently is to pave Yerger to 29th, make that square. That will connect all these lots.
And then take 29th just to the east of Lincoln at about two
Nope.
blocks?
Nope.
There's a cul-de-sac on the plan that's.
Yeah, but that's
in
just
here.
theoretical.
Okay, so that's just up to the
What's going out for
intersection.
bid is just that square.
And that's where the
29th.
1.2.
Yeah. I don't know if Dave's got an estimate on that or not, but
So I guess getting to the bottom line, we have roughly 2.8 million in that at our cost, because as the mayor had commented, it's shovel ready, which is a huge bonus for those properties to be developed.
yeah, that's why it's our development.
And then
So
also the land, the 1.2. So we're close to 4 million invested in that property by the time the street gets done. So how do we recoup all of those costs? You're saying that we'll recoup them through utilities? Because from what I understand, this area is fully tiffable, the entire area. Is that correct, or am I wrong on that?
the
You had
entire area
mentioned
is what?
Tiffable. It's declared blighted and substandard, the tech park.
Yeah, it's typical, yes.
And so there'll be expectation of that because it's known that that is a blighted and substandard area.
If the
And also-
project's large enough to qualify, they might, but none of these are. Well, I should take that back.
Well,
I think
a
Seth is
few of them might be.
considering it, so
He's
it depends on
considering
how
it, but
big it is.
It's not likely.
So you have to be a certain size to be able to really make it worthwhile.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
May I speak?
Yeah.
I guess a
State
number of
your
things.
name and-
Pardon me?
State your name. and-
I've forgotten at this point in time. Just want to go home. David Mitchell, 81 West Fifth Street with the Oaks Law Firm here on behalf of McGinn Holdings. I guess just a number of things to address Councilman Yerger's concerns as well as Councilman Jacobus and some of the other general discussion. I guess to begin, I think you need to ask yourself a question, whether you want this part to develop, whether you want to sell these lots, or do you want to put up roadblocks every time you have a potential buyer here and think of 5 reasons why you shouldn't be selling the property to them? Because if that's the mentality, I would just as soon you vote no so we can move on. I'm not aware of any quality commercial development that doesn't have the infrastructure and roads in first. In this particular case, you don't have the roads in because we didn't know exactly how the park was going to develop over time because it was originally going to be a data park. Now you're starting to see interest expressed from different types of potential users. And the city's been blessed with the fact that it hasn't had to put the roads in yet because we're waiting for the canvas to be painted. Now the canvas is painting, and what buyers expect when they buy a shovel-ready piece of property is that the streets are paved when they buy the lot. McGinn Holdings isn't going to buy 4 acres or 4.635 acres and have concrete poured in front of its business with a drop off until someone else decides to buy a lot down the road. That's silly. You're a developer in this particular case. And as a developer, you need to finish the infrastructure if you want to sell the rest of the lots. That is, if you want to sell the rest of the lots. Because if I'm hearing things correctly tonight, there's one councilman who's concerned about whether we're going to be a warehouse company. I'd like to know how you define warehousing. Do you mean we're going to be warehousing for multiple users who bring multiple different companies' products in our facility we're going to be distributing? Is that how you define it? As opposed to a contract manufacturing facility that accumulates its inventory and distributes it out of there, which is what they'll be doing. If you don't want that project there, let us know now so we can go elsewhere. So this business in Fremont that is a success story in and of itself can go elsewhere and stop wasting our time. As far as the other issues that have been raised, we understand that the infrastructure, including the paving, is built into the purchase price. Now, it could have been by special assessments, but this price is negotiated out, and we understand that those 4 acres times the our 4.6 acres times that number of acres includes the infrastructure. A buyer shouldn't have to come to a shovel-ready site and then say, oh, well, by the way, you got to pay for us to finish doing our job as a developer. That's not how it works. Didn't work for us that way at Yeager Place with the hotel development. Hasn't worked with any commercial development I've ever worked on, including Nelson Business Park, where Eagle Distributing and FCC is located. The infrastructure was in before those lots were finished up and sold out. I'm sorry that I'm pitching an attitude here, but I'm just concerned. And I'm hoping Seth's not listening to the initial comments, because I've sat through this council through when Kelly Closure was raked over the coals over an idea it had to operate its long-term business in a different way. I'm concerned that RTG's name was drugged through the papers for a long period of time over infighting issues where no one realized that the executives at RTG read the paper. Now we've got a business owner who truly can locate his business anywhere, and we're being asked due diligence questions as if we don't know what we're doing. We know what we're doing, and that's why we've got a 120-day due diligence period to determine whether or not this site will be suitable. We'll be looking at the zoning ordinance. We'll be looking at boring samples. We'll be looking at elevations, at drainage, all those kinds of things for 120 days. And then we'll come back to you and tell you whether we're going to close the deal. But if you're not anxious to close the deal, let us know. It's just that simple. Now, that's the negative side of this. The exciting thing, excuse me, about this is that we've got a business that we can retain. We've got a chip that you get in the game by doing the right thing and voting for progress. Or we can vote to be a cave society, citizens against virtually everything, because that's what I'm hearing tonight. This deal right now is perfectly on par with the Bird contract that you approved previously, with the exception that we expect the road to be finished, and we expect to be finished by September, when we understand it will probably be done by June. And I'm glad we put that clause in that contract, because it keeps your feet to the fire and gives us the assurance that our client will have the lot where they can dig that first shovel of dirt and keep that business in town. Again, I'm sorry about the attitude, but I'm shocked that you don't have more people, including the cable company last week, that leave this chambers where they should be doing high fives out in the hall. Man, I'm glad we picked Fremont instead of what in the hell was that all about? So I ask you simply to either vote to take this to the first reading or the third reading, or not. And I'll answer any other questions that you have.
Councilmember Jacobus.
You missed questions for opposition, which I'm dismayed at, because you do often do that. It's no reason to get on a high horse and start the lecture. That said, I don't know that anybody has voiced opposition other than ask questions for clarification. The one thing I do not like is the $100 a day penalty built in. The city's always honored its contracts and always followed through. And the questions were for the staff, because this has been an ongoing process since prior to 2009, actually, and it's been very convoluted along its path. But I believe by the vote that was taken at the prior week, you shouldn't have just automatically assumed, because questions were still here due to some of the changes. For instance, 12,000 given back instead of 9. And now
that was your suggestion. Thank you.
Actually,
you suggested that we look at the Bird contract.
It's a different resolution or a different document that's in front of us has been modified. And yet one of those that is still in there, that the seller should pay liquidated damages. I think the city has done a stellar accomplishment by having it all ready. I actually didn't realize until it was voiced tonight that we had all the utilities there to the site. I did not know that, but that got brought out during discussion.
Not
And
down,
I'm taking
not
issue.
down 29.
And the
just up
issue I'm
there.
having is that you just assume because questions are being asked, that somehow you feed it to the fire.
No.
But it's called vetting it and getting a better understanding.
You see,
I
when-
voted for it last week and I had no intention to oppose it. I'm just taken aside by your comment.
When my
However, I'll
client-
put it down and I do not agree with the $100 a day penalty. That's
Okay.
the issue I have with this
Well,
document.
when my client has a
Thank you, we're
social
done.
media forwarded to me, where you're challenging why he's not paying for the roads and for the infrastructure, that tells me two things. That you're pushing that cost back on him. It tells me that there might be opposition to finishing out the roads, and it tells me that you're not informed on that project. I'm not on a high horse. I come in here with my research done. And I call it as I see it. And I see roadblocks being put up to this project. And again, if you don't want it, then don't vote for it. But if you think it's a good thing for Fremont, vote for it. It's just that simple. We can disagree on semantics and whether my attitude is one way or the other, or your perspective is. But this is a good thing for Fremont.
Councilman Yerger.
Well, I didn't get the questions answered that I asked in completion before Councilmember Jacobus asked hers. And so I still have questions that hopefully staff and or the applicant's attorney can ask.
Sure.
And just for the record, I'm not opposing Mr. Ginn's application for what he's doing. I'm trying to get to the bottom of whether or not, based on our municipal code, he understands whether or not he can actually build what he wants to build there or not. I'm only trying to help. If you find out later you can't build it, I guess 120 days from now, you can say, well, you don't want it because I can't build it. I'm just trying to ask the questions to make sure you've asked the city the questions, because I asked some of these questions of the planning director. She said she hadn't consulted on this matter, and the questions I were raising were good ones. And I'm still waiting for Mr. Godekin to tell me, or for you to tell me, what this business specifically does, and whether or not Jaeger Road or 29th Street are going to be collector streets. Because if you don't have answers to those questions, you don't know whether he can build here or not, because warehousing requires a collector street access. Light industrial, which you mentioned, requires a collector street access. And if you don't have those, you can't build, not by code today.
Yes.
And even if then you have the right setbacks, you still have to do the buffer yard, which I indicated before. And is he aware that he'll have to shave off 25 feet of his property to do that? Has the city declared that for you? Because in my discussions with the planning director, those are going to be requirements. I'm just hopeful that Mr. McGinn knows all of this, that you've already researched, as you said, all of those things. Because if you could have said, we've handled that, we know that, that's great. But so far, I haven't nobody has said, what do we do for this business? I assume he's getting product in from overseas. He puts it in his facility.
That's correct.
What he does with it there, I don't know. And does he do anything else there, which makes it industrial rather than warehousing? Because it sounds to me like if he takes product in and ships product out, that's probably categorized as warehousing under municipal code. But if he's doing other things, you might need to know that before he buys property.
Yes.
Because we have to fit it into the business park zoning code. And that's why I asked.
Right.
Not because I didn't want him there, only because I wanted to make sure he's fully informed. And with regards to the tables and the pricings that I asked about, I like to see consistent numbers used in everybody's purchase agreement. And your calculations or someone's calculations for the number of contributory jobs,
Yes.
again, I think was incorrect to your detriment by 1 or 1.2. I don't believe we have 0.2 employees. So again, I was attempting to look out for Mr. McGinn's interest. When it comes to the public, I firmly believe that LB 840 money used for infrastructure should be repaid and put back in the LB 840 fund, and city code provides for that. And we got that through several months ago. And if we were charging appropriate amounts for this infrastructure improved property, some of that money could go back to LB 840. But when we give it all away based on $12,000 per job contribution or per acre, excuse me, that money isn't going to be there to replenish the LB 840 fund to do other kinds of work that we did to infrastructure ready this particular property. So that's what I'm looking at. It isn't anything specific to Mr. McGinn and his application, but I would like to understand his business before we approve things that might be zoning restricted that we haven't actually discussed or considered. I would hate to have him come back. I know he has to get a limited use permit from the discussions I've had with the planning director already. What else he might have to have, I'm not sure, because I don't know his business well enough.
Okay, well, let me explain a little bit how the process works. You see, I'm in the process right now with Larson International relocating their facilities on East 23rd Street out to North Highway 77. The project we put under contract is ag ground in a floodplain. So if I ask the question right then, well, can I build a commercial building in a floodplain on an ag ground? The answer is no. Case closed, I go someplace else. That's not how we do it. We find a piece of ground that we think might work. We get under contract before somebody else does. And then we take those 120 days and decide whether or not that project is going to fit the needs of the client. We're going to be checking zoning. We're going to be checking everything we need to make sure that Seth can operate this business with an unfettered tether, that he can go 100% both now and in the future. We're checking that. I'm well aware of the buffer yard. I own property just south of there on 23rd Broad Street, or 23rd and Jaeger, where we gave up 25 feet. It's safe to say we've had that conversation with my client, but the 120 days is where we become educated on whether this site will be suitable and where we'll be discovering a lot of things. That's why they call it due diligence. And if we put this under contract at some point in time, then you'll be hearing from us in 120 days as to whether or not we're waiving that condition or we're moving ahead with closing the deal. At the same time, we'll be considering economic incentive packages. At this point, as it turns out, it doesn't look like there's going to be much out there. So it looks like if Seth moves ahead with this deal, it's probably going to be without any incentives at all. And so all of the other discussion, I guess, I just hope at the end of the day, he's still going to be interested in purchasing the ground. But the first thing you do in any piece of ground is get under contract. We'll worry about the zoning later. If we can't deal with the zoning, we'll let the property go. And if you've got a better buyer right now for this 4.65 acres, it's ready to hit the ground tomorrow, then have at it. But we shouldn't be having this negative discussion. It should be, how can we help you? We understand you may have some roadblocks, let us help you. And if you don't appreciate how we appreciate it on this end, then maybe we can have a further discussion sometime over a cup of coffee.
Dave, can you address the Collector Street question?
Dave Godikin, Director of Public Works, City Engineer. I believe the question was the status of Jaeger Road and 29th Street. I'll start with 29th Street first. 29th Street is not presently at this time a street east of Jaeger Road, so it has not been designated. Jaeger Road has been designated as a collector street. It's been on our collector street map since at least 2016 and probably prior to that.
Councilmember McLean, actually, Councilmember Coons.
Yeah, if we're done throwing out all the bureaucratic red tape, I would like to introduce a motion to have the first reading on this.
We actually have.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a first and a second. That would be to introduce. We still have comments from the public to come. But we do have a motion and a second to introduce. So cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 7-0 with one abstention, Mayor.
This time we'll have comments from the public.
Gary Clark, President and CEO, Greater Fremont Development Council, 1005 East 23rd Street. I just wanted to make 2 additional comments on this
Actually,
project.
We did have comments from the public, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Just gonna try to get another one in.
So, no.
Yeah, technically, maybe the applicant.
So we had a motion to introduce and hold first reading. That was your motion, Mike?
Yes, that was my motion. And when we finish
That
with
passed. So at this point in time, we'll have first reading.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to McGinn Holdings LLC pursuant to Nebraska law on first reading.
There'll be 2 more readings on this particular item.
Excuse me?
Councilman Jensen.
I'd like to move to waive this second and third reading, move this directly to the final reading. Let's be done with this.
Councilmember Jensen, I wouldn't recommend doing that. We don't have a legal description for the property yet. So.
I got a question though. What can we do to move it to where it should be at without that mistake? Can we move it to the second reading?
Just, we could waive second reading at the next,
Okay,
meeting, once we have the legal description.
Okay.
Actually, it's 9 o'clock. We're going to take a 10-minute break.
You did.
How you doing? Well. Something else. I agree.
Dave Godikin, Director of Public Works, City Engineer. Also serve as the liaison to the city to the Airport Advisory Board. This item is for the construction of the terminal building at the Fremont Municipal Airport. This is the last phase of been a lengthy project to determine the best location for the terminal, design the terminal, design the apron, seek approval from the FAA, seek approval from the Nebraska Department of Aeronautics, and acquire funding, I guess, through the FAA and the NDA as part of the apron project. What you have tonight is the award of bids, a request for award of bids for the terminal building itself, which will be the structure That would be the terminal or the new terminal. The terminal building would be located west of the westerlymost hangars at the airport. The entrance will be off of 23rd Street. The terminal will be located adjacent to the runway. There were 8 bidders on this project. Ronco Construction was the low bidder on the project. The bid price is $1.667 million. The original architect's estimate was like $2.2 million, I believe. So we're below the estimate on the project. The apron project is recently completed. That was done with 90% funding from the FAA and Nebraska Department of Aeronautics and 10% from the city. That was a $2.4 million project. So we received all of that minus $240,000, which would be the city's share. The terminal building will be 100% local funded, and construction would be able to start anytime after the signing of contract documents, assuming a favorable vote on this project tonight. The chairman of the airport board is present tonight, Mr. Bob Steenblock. The architect with the Davis Design is present on Zoom if there are any questions for the architects as well. And I'm here for any questions you may have as well.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Jacobus.
Dave, does this 1.6 million, does that include all infrastructure to site fully serviced, water, sewer, electric, gas, everything tied in? It's one complete package, all concrete, et cetera. There's no other bells and whistles we need to add or pay for?
That is turnkey. That includes everything but a monument sign at the gate, which we would just have a normal
The
sign.
what?
Sign at the gate that says terminal here. That's the only thing that is not included in this package.
So there's no additional cost as far as utilities?
Nope, the utilities are brought to the building site itself, the drive, the gate, the fencing, the security, the lighting, everything is included in this package.
Okay, thank you.
Except for construction management.
Except construction management, yes, with the inspector.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Ellis.
Okay, at one time that back in June when we were looking at these numbers, there was quite a bit of money that was going to be needed to get utilities out there. That's included in this price?
That is included in this price.
So why do you suppose it went from 2.3 down to 1.6?
We got very good bids, let's say. We got 8 bidders. It's hard to tell.
Okay.
Sometimes they come in high, sometimes they came in low, and this one came in very favorable.
So is this considered hard costs? Is there soft costs that are going to be on top of that?
I would consider the soft cost would be the construction management.
And how much is that going to be?
We haven't negotiated that yet, but it's usually, let's say 10%.
10%?
Yeah, of construction.
Okay.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
Has there been any attempt at all to find funding other than our general fund?
Yes, when we originally started this, it was kind of a package deal. We were going to build the apron, we were going to build a terminal, all in one deal, apply with the FAA, apply with the Department of Aeronautics for funding. Department of Aeronautics had already ear tagged $600,000 for this project, but as we move forward, the FAA and the Department of Aeronautics look much more favorably on, I think I call it hard infrastructure. What they like: runways, they like taxiways, they like hangars, they like aprons, they like those kinds of infrastructure. Terminals are not necessary. They understand that they're needed, but they're not necessarily given a high priority for funding. So early on, probably about 2 years ago, we looked at that and it really became more favorable to separate the two projects. If you looked at total dollars that we could receive, we're better off trying to get those total dollars for the apron project, and that's what we did. So we got just a little over $2.2 million or $2 million for that project, but that came with the caveat then that the terminal will be built with strictly city funds. The other thing, if we use federal dollars for the terminal building itself, the FAA has a circular, they call it, but basically it's a guideline for terminals. we would have had a much, much smaller terminal building probably than what we would have needed. They only will fund what they consider essential. And for a general aviation airport, which is what Fremont is, the available dollars or what they would require for the size of a building would be much less than what we were actually able to include in this bid package.
So what are we getting that's more than essential? I mean, there's.
No, well, I don't know that it's necessarily less than essential. You know, they're going to tell you how many offices you can have. They're going to tell me what size of, they don't call it a conference room, it's a flight training room. Just things like that. One of the things that struck me is silly. They won't pay for a janitor's room, like, you know, just a mop sink and that kind of stuff. You know, obviously you need it, but that's one of the things that they would not fund.
So going back to my last question, there is no other funding for this or has been looked at to get for the terminal. It's all coming out of general funds. But we did get federal funds for the apron.
We got federal funds for the apron, just over $2 million.
Do you know of any other city in the state of Nebraska that has paid out of general funds their full terminal price?
I couldn't tell you. I have no idea.
Do you know, have you looked at any, Norfolk is looking at doing the same thing, but they're looking at other alternative ways of trying to raise funds for their terminal. Have you compared us to any other city our size as far as what they're doing for terminals?
No, I haven't. And part of that is everybody's a little bit different. You know, every airport, every project, you know, everything's a little different. And as we moved this project through, you know, we completed a study. Burns McDonnell was the name of the firm that did that. They studied different locations for the terminal and apron, and that type of thing. And then once we got everything ready, we went into final design. The money was there. We built the apron. If we don't build the terminal, we'll have an apron out there without a terminal as well.
Again, I'm not against the terminal. I'm just against it coming out of the general funds. And that's what bothers me was 1.6 million. And you said there could be additional costs above this as far as
construction
change orders and
management.
that kind of stuff. So
Yes.
this is not a hard figure. You'll come back with more probably. But that's what I'm upset with is the citizens of Fremont got to vote on $2 million for an auditorium. They got to vote for $2 million for the library. And this is not getting before the voters. And so that's what upsets me as a citizen and as a councilman. So my time is up. Thank you very much.
All right.
I guess the only thing I would say is past councils, past budgets have put dollars, have earmarked dollars out of the general fund for this project. Past councils have budgeted for this based on the dollars we would receive from the federal government in regards to the FAA for the apron and for the terminal. There's another hangar that they would like to build, and we have secured some dollars for that out of private funding. But until that can be paid for, that probably won't happen. But consuls, prior consuls to this council, and I know Councilman Ellis, you've been involved for a couple of years now, but prior to you being on council, all these plans have been moved forward to get it to the point where it's at today. And the plan always was to take the dollars that we had set aside for this project. So, Councilman Jensen.
Oh, Mayor Getchman pretty much spoke to what I was going to have you speak to about that the FBO terminal is not part of this, but that funding, what is involved in that is private funding. I understand it's nowhere close to fully funded yet, but there are private dollars going into that.
Yes, staff is working with the board and working locally to try to acquire some private funding for that, yes.
Any other questions for staff? The applicants here, actually, the president of the airport board. You want to just give a quick overview, Bob?
I do have some documents.
I would take a motion to receive. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to receive.
Councilmember Jacobus.
I will second the motion.
Yeah.
I'm Bob Steenblock, Fremont resident.
Please cast your vote for receiving of the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Coons votes yes.
Thanks, Mike. Mayor's sleeping on the job here.
Councilmember Yerger, thank you. Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I'm Bob Steenblock, Fremont, 2402 North Lincoln Avenue. I've been a resident here for 50 plus years. Been a pilot here for 50 years. And this is kind of a, I've been on this board for quite a few years. And in fact, I think, looking through the notes here a little bit, that this has been before this city council about 16 times since 2013. Okay, so we've been at it for quite a while. As far as something, I didn't know this before, and I'll ask, I'll just bring this up. The FAA has done a flight operations per year out here. There's 22,300 aircraft that come out here every year at this airport, of which 10,100 of them are what they call non-local. Okay, so that's people that are flying from somewhere else to here for business or for a purpose, not just flying around. Okay, they're here for a reason, and which I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. There's an economic impact done by the NDA, the Nebraska. This is done, for the Nebraska, and this brings in $10,541,000 every year to this city of Fremont. Okay, and it also impacts about 90 some jobs. So I don't know what that does, not on a high horse here or anything, but what the library brings in and what the auditorium brings in every year. But this does bring in money to this city. Okay, so as far as the hangars go, and this is, I've flown in and out of here. I fly to different states for my work, and a lot of times, probably 10 different states are on this area, and same way, go to different airports, and that's why I'm based here. So it's a good airport. It just isn't, it's a little antiquated, and that's why we're trying to get it updated. Okay, I believe that it's probably some areas of it aren't all in ADA compliant, and I know the apron out there is way too small for some of the airplanes that come in here, have come in here, and that sort of stuff. Parking lot's small, does not have a pilot's lounge for pilots that fly these planes in here and have to stay over for several hours sometimes, and do their work that they do. So this things I'd just like you to consider, okay? And this is a viable, a good project that we're doing here. So I'm 100% in favor of it, of course, but that's all I have to say about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bechtel.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I mean, my stance on this has always been, this is not a novelty project by any means. I mean, we have so many businesses that people do not realize that use this airport. So many people who are the heads of business who like having this airport here. If you're an executive of a major company and your business is either planted in Fremont or you're looking at coming to Fremont, you're not going to fly into Omaha and then drive an hour and come down. There are private jets that billionaires do use this, that people just don't realize that. So if you're looking at this as this is just a novelty project, then it's not worth it. But it's so much more than that. And I think that it's a lot of people don't even realize how much business this helps us bring into the community. And so I think it is very much a necessary project if we want to continue to, I mean, this is for a lot of these companies, this is the first thing that they're going to see in Fremont is this airport. So if you want to have a crappy, outdated airport and have them think that we have a crappy, outdated town, then that's the impression that you're going to start off with. So I think that we need to have a nice airport. And I think that this is a very necessary project to bring in more business to Fremont.
Councilman Jensen?
Yeah, I'll just share with council and others that I've been to several of the airport advisory committee meetings. They've been gracious enough. They've taken me out on the tarmac. I've driven around out there in trucks. They've showed me what the problems were, why some of the asphalt coming up, getting into the props of the planes. So these props for some of those planes are $75,000 a piece, and they're having to replace them more often than they should. The apron project is taking care of some of that. They've explained how important it is to have a line of sight with on your airport with the terminal that they don't have now, that this will give them. I'll echo what Councilman Bechtel said. This is an important project for Fremont. It's not just a toy. It's important for us.
Councilman Legban?
Yeah, I just want to say there's a lot of misinformation out there on social media about this terminal. I've gotten numerous calls and emails asking me why it has a bar in it. There is no bar. There's a coffee bar, if you want to call a shelf with a coffee pot on it a coffee bar. There is no bar. And at the first call I got, I had to call and ask, is there a bar? Because it caught me off guard. Obviously, there is no bar. And I just want everyone in Fremont to know there's no bar. And it's rampant on social media right now about why is there a bar? I better stop there before I say too much. So,
Councilmember Jacobus.
I got the same, and I was going to comment on that, but I wouldn't have minded a couple jugs of Crown Royal or something in there. I'm not a coffee drinker. However, I've been supportive of the airport building. It's been a push and shove and discussion that's always been worth having, and understand the financials. The only issue I have is that we have a law enforcement center that failed, and we have to find a way to fund that. And hopefully our general fund can support moving ahead with that as well as this airport. But I've never opposed the airport structure because I know it's needed. I've been out there multiple times. I've been on different tours of the area and the hangars, et cetera. Whether the funding from the feds paid for the apron or paid for the terminal, it's tomatoes, tomatoes. We did get funding to help us along in this project. So for that, I am supportive of it.
Councilman Ellis?
Yeah, I just want to approach the urban legend of the bar. The very, very first architect drawings that came out for the terminal did have a bar in it. It was raised immediately, and the next couple of drawings that came out, it was removed. So, you know, it wasn't urban legend. There was design stuff there. They've made the terminal smaller. I can appreciate that. They've made it less luxurious. I can appreciate that. But again, I still have a problem with the citizens of Fremont putting the cost for a majority of this project. And so I'm going to give up my time or the rest of the time because I believe we skipped over the public area or public comment.
We haven't got there yet.
Oh, I thought we did at one time.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, that was the last one.
Okay. All right. I'm going to.
Any other comments from council? Is there public comment?
Mike Wachtel's on the Zoom.
Mike, you've got
Yeah,
the floor.
I'm being heard.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to Mr. Ellis or Glenn Ellis's comment. I don't know for sure what happened, but I can pretty much guarantee there was never a bar in the project. It was probably a coffee bar, and maybe we couldn't read the word coffee or something, but there was never any liquor or booze area in this terminal. It was never in the design.
Thank you.
I don't know what it was, but it was labeled bar.
Is there any other public comment? Yes.
Well, am I still on?
You're off. Go ahead.
I am.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about to the listener. I'm sorry. Paul Von Buren, 2046 East 30th in Fremont. I'm late to the game on this one, but one of the things that really intrigued me about this and piqued my interest was the number of conversations I had from the period of June through October running for council. I've been surprised at the level of emotion among people. I know the police and fire bond was voted down, but if anything, this one probably has more opposition publicly, maybe the misunderstandings. But this one has more opposition publicly than even the police and fire. So I did a little checking, and I certainly don't, I think Bob has better numbers than I did, but I just randomly picked 200 flights, 100 flights this summer, 100 flights just recently, just to see where it is. But about 80% of that traffic was actually within an hour of Fremont. There were certainly airplanes from Sioux Falls and Bemidji and the Denver area. But I was surprised, the bulk of that within an hour, 60% of that was actually Fremont traffic out and back of itself. So about 3 weeks ago, ironically, a friend of mine who is with the FAA was flying through from Houston, and he asked me to come meet in Omaha, and I did. We started talking about this. He took me over to JetLinks, which is a custom charter service. They've been in Fremont, from what they tell me, 40 to 50 times and flown in here somewhat regularly. But I walked into it. It's a beautiful facility, wonderful terminal with plush bathroom, snacks, coffee bar, everything that you could want. And there was absolutely nobody there. And obviously that's not much of a fair test. Like I called the operations manager and I just simply said, what's your opinion? What do you think? His single comment was, we love Fremont because you have a 6,300-foot runway. We use it as an alternate site. The runway is the attraction. They charter jets out of there all the time. They have private jets, corporate jets. There's constant jet traffic. My friend certifies their pilots. So that's the role. But the point of it was the jet traffic charters coming in and out, valued the 6,300-foot runway that we have. So I said, just point blank, is the terminal important? He said, our passengers never spend any time there. They just go through. They've got other things to do. So what about the pilots? We maintain a nice terminal in Omaha because they have to hang out there while they fuel, etc. But I'll give you his exact quotes. All we would ever ask is for comfortable chairs for our pilots. So my point of it is, I agree. I've flown privately out there for business. I understand the facility needs renovation. You do need work on the tarmac, out on certainly on the surface areas. But with the scale that is being planned, I was stunned after this, frankly. And as you look at what's here, when you set aside meeting rooms and what we've already done to allow for meeting rooms within the city, it looks like this could be scaled back, maybe to the point of, I don't know. I'm not going to try to even guess that. But given the comments of a charter service that's been in and out of here 40 to 50 times, they really see no tremendous value on an elaborate terminal, a nice bathrooms. Passengers go in and out. Our pilots give them a comfortable chair. They're good to go. So I'm not sure what bearing that has in the project, but obviously with the people coming in here corporately, I think those are some valid comments that are worth noting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Mitch, your hand's up. Go ahead.
Hi, Mitch Narringer, 1350 Pepperwood Court. I'm a recreational pilot, and there are 80 airports in the state of Nebraska, which I've flown to 54 of them. And to reiterate the importance of our runway, it's an incredible asset. The fact that we have a 6,300-foot runway is more powerful than probably most people who don't fly realize. We can land medium to larger size jets in there, which is very important. As someone mentioned, that JetLinks uses it as an alternate. But also, the terminal is the face of the community to a lot of these people. And yeah, they might breeze right through there, but it is an impression point. And of the 54 airports I've landed at in this state, I got to tell you, the terminal is far down the list in terms of the quality and the impression that it makes. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Gary?
Gary Clark, President and CEO of Greater Fremont Development Council, 1005 East 23rd Street. First and foremost, speaking on behalf of GFDC and our support of the municipal airport terminal project, I thought about this though, and my first experience on a plane, and I know everybody has one, right? I'm sure you remember the first time you were on a plane. For me, it was coming to Nebraska. First flight ever, almost missed it, running through the terminal, Council Member Ellis, and luckily made that flight and came here. And I cried like a baby because I was tearful and fearful of where I was going. For me, I just had to think about that when I was thinking of this project and the fact that it creates opportunity. And I think Councilmember Beckel talked a little bit about this, the massive support that it gives to our corporate companies that are here. The massive amount of jobs that it supports, not directly, but indirectly. The impact economically is rival to the companies that come in here every month and request services, assistance, incentives. And so if you look at the $10.5 million that was mentioned earlier of economic impact and think about the jobs that are tied to that 91, almost 100 jobs that we have equated to that number, think of the companies in your community that equal that impact. Think of the companies that equal that impact. Now expand it a little bit more. Don't just think about what exists right now, but think of your community as it's growing. The population, I see the numbers, they're growing slowly but surely. You need housing, you need all of these pieces. Now think of this terminal project as a piece of the body. All of us started out maybe 5, 6, and we start to grow, and all of a sudden our shoes don't fit anymore, right? And all of a sudden our belts need to loosen out a little bit. And now all of these things cost a little bit more. But the whole point of it is to make sure that as we're growing, that everything is sustained and in its right place and that it fits. This is the same with the Fremont Municipal Airport project. We look at the jobs, the travel visits that we see, 5,000 plus, corporate and others, right? The important point here is that it's not just an economic driver for just the companies, but it's business attraction. The job that you have us as a nonprofit doing in your community, the companies that look for the sites that we have, that we own in this community. How do they get here? What's the first thing they see? I think this is all in all a conversation that we continuously have about all of these items on the agenda that tie to business. And I think Councilmember Ellis, you keep asking about whether or not why this is important to the citizens of Fremont. Well, the jobs that we create here are tied to the citizens of Fremont. Well, the sales tax base tied to the citizens of Fremont. The expansion of the tax base so that it doesn't burden one citizen, tied to the citizens of Fremont. So is the municipal airport because it's a part of that one body. So I'd ask all of you to consider that when you consider this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Walker.
Mike Wackel.
I just wanted to add one short comment. The board, they were designing.
Just to be, Mike.
Yes.
I just want to clarify, you are the architect and basically just want to clarify the fact that you would have that to offer. So go ahead.
Yes, I'm Mike Wackel, principal with Davis Design. We design the air terminal. And I only got a couple of comments. Number one, the airport board really did make a lot of very smart, frugal decisions during the design of this thing. It was really squeezed down to a bare minimum when we talk about square footage and the actual materials and the way the building was put together. So They're really, this is a very efficient building. And then at the time we put it out to bid, we hit the market at an extremely good time. There was one time where I think we had over a dozen general contractors thinking about bidding on this job. We ended up getting 8 bids, which is incredible. And these bids were, from the low of 1.667, there was a couple bids that were just shy of $2 million. So as far as the city of Fremont, you guys made out well. I mean, it's almost like a 10% cost reduction in the amount of bids you got on that job. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Comments from council? Councilman Yerger?
I don't have too much to say on this topic. I've been listening tonight with regards to pros and cons, and I do have heard pros and cons for favorable and not favorable with regards to spending the money on the airport over the course of the last several months. And I want to applaud the airport authority for doing due diligence on the work and Dave for working on the project. My issue is sort of this, and we've had this happen to council, that happened to this council, which makes me sensitive to it. This is an issue that will follow us across the city for some time into the future. We're doing the terminal in this particular discussion, but then there's additional discussions about hangars and other kinds of things that will still go on. Because this is one of those living, breathing kinds of opportunities, I really am uncomfortable at this juncture on this project, binding our capital spending, which others may have bound us to, binding us tonight on the capital spend priority on this issue before the new council takes its seats at the next meeting. So I'd like to make a motion that we continue this item until the December 8th council meeting so that the newly elected mayor and city council members can have a chance to weigh in on this important decision for the city, because it won't be just a one-time decision. I don't think that a one meeting delay will necessarily impact this greatly, and it will give those folks the opportunity to weigh in from ground zero relative to, is this the right capital priority for the city when we look across the breadth of capital expenditure items that are on our plate. So with that, I make a motion to continue this item to the next meeting.
Is there a second? Councilman Ellis?
Second.
Cast your votes.
Councilman Coons votes no.
Motion fails 2-6.
Councilmember Jacobus?
I would make a motion to approve and award the contract and approve resolution 2022-37.
Councilmember Lakeman?
And I will second that.
Ready? Cast your votes.
Councilman Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 7-1.
Item 19. Councilmember Jacobus item, discussion and possible action regarding the Joint Law Enforcement Center status, consideration of alternatives due to voters' opposition to passing the bonds. Councilmember Jacobus.
I put this on here because obviously everybody's aware that the voters voted this down. And though I did support and vote for the airport, I would think in the same spirit we need to support our police department. We all understand and agree that is a woefully inadequate facility. Voters had voted for $2 million for the renovation of the city auditorium. It received CDBG grants, et cetera, so it's 100% funded. $2 million in bonds was approved, but yet to be thrown on the table for the library. They're still in the struggles of trying to raise an additional 6 million. There's been no additional grants or city coffers offered to the library. And for me, a library is important. It's education of our society, of our community as a whole, which helps us all grow and prosper. That said, with the law enforcement having failed, what is the status of the land? Who owns it? What is our intent? Can we work with what we have and expand that? Can we expand in the street? Can we renovate? Can we make additions onto and construct? How much money will that take? We had a study done prior to 2017 that was completed. And now we're moving forward with the airport, even though when we did a full strategic planning session in 2017, the police station was at the top of the list for the want and the need. It was equal and synonymous. So I'm asking council, what do you feel your priorities are? And how can we move forward? And I'm also asking city administrator, what funding do we have to move ahead with the police station renovation, et cetera? Because now that the voters either didn't like the cost or the bonds, or they didn't like the location. We still have a woefully inadequate, not up to code, outdated facility that is not servicing our police department.
Yeah, go ahead.
There you go. We still have some money, Shane, I think is here, we have some money left that we were going to do final design. But that, again, this won't take us near that far. We have nothing in the budget. Actually, the chief, is chief here? Shane's here. Do you know, did the chief budget in their capital budget for any improvements there? We did the roof on the police building. We haven't done HVAC. I don't think we budgeted much. So to answer your question, probably not a lot.
I think,
it went by.
if I remember correctly, and probably the mayor remembers, I think we budgeted 1 million for repairs, but we only spent about 150,000 on the roof because we were delaying any major repairs, waiting for the vote. I didn't think it'd be prudent to spend a bunch of money if you passed it on.
But even $1 million on the HVAC system is $1 million.
Yeah, it's at least that problem. I think I was talking to Assistant City Administrator Shaven. He thought it was going to be 500, 600,000, but yeah, it's probably that.
We spent probably 250 to 300,000 since, and 150 of that was on the roof.
Yeah.
We built a wall that was
That's
a
correct.
protective wall that got put in, which basically made it to where officers were safe when people came in that door. And then there was just some basic maintenance items that continue to be done, which have to do with HVAC and different things there. So, I mean, I think we're on a clip of spending somewhere between 25 and 30-some thousand every year just to keep the HVAC running in the summer months.
Yes, correct.
So from the financial standpoint, what uncommitted funds do we have available to us that as the new council takes their seat and goes through a strategic planning with the new mayor and the new seats? What uncommitted funds are available to try to commit to this? Because this is a need. It's not a work.
And you remember, Jody is always, as we went through this process, she set aside like $3 million that's sitting there before this project. And that 300 or 350 has come out of that $3 million. That's about what's there, right? I mean, somewhere between $3 and $4 million.
So what is the step?
She said that we would have earmarked for this project.
Jody's got her hand up.
Okay.
And Jody, I'll let you, sorry, quit floundering here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there is still, there are reserves in the general fund available, but they've not been appropriated. Yet for this year, of course, as we move through the capital improvement process with the new council, we'll, have some direction related to that. If the council chose to commit some funds to that, but it's not enough to cover the cost of a new building. But if there are additional renovations that need to be done at the existing building, that could be built in the capital plan for the next fiscal year.
What is the status of the land then?
The land is jointly owned by the county, so, council, the new mayor and council will have to talk about it. We need to meet with the county, figure out what their plans are and see if we want to continue jointly or if we want to go separate ways. So there'll be discussions.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Are there any comments from the public? This is really a discussion item, so any other comments from council? Moving on. Item 20. Resolution 2020-238, approving the request Fremont Land Company to replat Morningside 2 addition approximately 22.42 acres at southeast corner of Morningside Road and Luther Road. At this time, I'll have staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Brian Newton, City Administrator. Filling in for Jennifer again. This went to the Planning Commission last month. It was approved by the Planning Commission. If you take a look at the drawing that is in there, you'll see what we're trying to accomplish here. We have to angle the corners on the intersections, and so the sidewalk stays on public right-of-way. And so we discovered that after the fact, and so this is just a modification of that plat, so that sidewalk stays on public property. Otherwise, we would have had to get an easement from all those landowners to put it on private. They didn't want to do that, so we're just replatting the corners. And I think Dave Godigan here is if you have any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Councilman Gerber?
Just briefly, I guess for my own edification and perhaps anyone else that didn't understand this from the get-go initially. This radiusing of street corners probably should have been and would be the new norm used in all subdevelopment development because of the handicap access sidewalks at the intersections, et cetera, as Jennifer was explaining it to me. This subdivision is kind of first on the request to replat. In order to accomplish that, we have that same potential issue in other subdivisions that we have recently approved over the course of the last year or so. Will we be expecting them to come back with replats for the same thing? Or what makes this unique to this subdivision?
I think he just was not far enough along in the process. He could easily come back. So the rest of them may do it too. You have to get an easement.
Well, that's my question. We can expect to see the other subdivisions, Sunridge and others, coming back to do the same thing because this is going to be kind of the new norm.
Dave Godigan, Director of Public Works. When they did Sunridge, they rounded the corners off when they platted it, so they do not need to come back.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of anyone else. I'm drawing a blank on that. But what happens is when you build the handicap ramps, you come off the street, you see them around town, you come off the street, you have to go up at a certain maximum slope. And then you have to have a landing that's 4 foot by 4 foot for just manipulation of wheelchairs, let's say, et cetera. And when we narrowed the right of way and narrowed the streets through the adoption of the UIB, that was kind of one of the unintended consequences. When you tried to, pardon me?
Yeah, UDC, Unified Code. The UDC.
Oh, okay. Yes, UDC. I'm sorry, I used the wrong acronym. Yeah. Let me take this thing off. It's easier. But basically, your handicap ramp and landing, no matter where you put it, is kind of the same configuration and the same size. But when we have the narrower right-of-ways relative to the streets that we have now, there wasn't enough room and you have to cut that corner off. So the option came up, can we do it as an easement or do it as a replat? And the developer preferred to do it as a replat, and that's why it's before you. It's strictly to make those ramps work.
And it makes perfect sense. I'm not debating that. So is Blue Stem subject to this? Did we round the corners in the Blue Stem development, or?
I don't recall. I would have to look. It was one of those things we didn't really even realize it until we started going out and trying to build sidewalks. And it was like, well, how do we make this work?
And that's what Jennifer was explaining to me as well. So I just assume we're probably going to get more of these.
It's possible,
potentially
yes.
at least.
Yes, and the developer did not, his preference was not to do easements.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution 2020-238, approving the request of Fremont Land Company to replat the Morningside Point addition. Councilman Yerger.
Yes, I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2020-238 for the replat of Morningside Point to re-radius the corners of sidewalks.
Councilman Legman.
I second that.
Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Motion carried 8-0, Mayor.
Item 21, ordinance 5547 pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Fremont Technology Park to Jody Weimer pursuant to Nebraska law. This will be for the first reading of this ordinance. This time on staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Brian Newton. I'm excited to bring the next two before you. This is the first one. If you look at the map, this is lot 7. It's in the corner. It's right on 29th Street, intersection of Jaeger. This is a small business. They have new contracts. They want to grow. They're very interested in expanding in the park. And I think it's a great opportunity to keep them here. Standard price $32,500. Same rebate that we talked about before in McGinn's. Contract is nearly the same. This is our standard city contract that we've used for Bird, as well as other properties. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff? Councilman Yerger.
I just have a couple of observations on this one. This one looks like to me, it calculates at the jobs contribution 0.4635, which if you round up, would round up to one job, since you're not doing partials. I don't know exactly how the 0.8 was calculated, but it seems to me this agreement should show one job. The other observation that I have is that, and I think we should amend for that purpose, 0.8 jobs, what they put into writing versus one job is not that significant, but I think the calculation was in error. What I attempted to point out earlier, and what I would attempt to point out in this one as well, that post-refund, these lots are being sold for just over $20,000. And so I still raise my concern as to whether or not the citizens of Fremont at a $20,000 an acre price is getting its fair remuneration with regards to these lots. I asked a question earlier and it wasn't answered as to what have the going lots in Fremont been selling for without infrastructure improvement versus infrastructure improvement. And it strikes me that some of the lots perhaps down in Southeast Fremont were going for more than $20,000. And these are improved lots. And so I'm just raising that as a concern.
So after the cost, $26,678 is the net cost after the rebate. So it's $26,000. I think it's very similar to what the lot prices were on Morningside, I believe, with improvements made.
And there is a challenge as well. I mean, when you look at the 450 acres that were sold to Costco, you know, we all would have loved for that to probably sell somewhere around 18 to 20,000 an acre, and you know, when they know that there's a buyer and someone that's coming forward, those prices change dramatically really quick because there's a demand, and that got really close to $24,000 to $25,000. When we looked at the ground, you recently heard that there was a developer that was looking at Fremont and Blair. They decided to go to Blair, and they went because of land costs. And that ground was somewhere around $25,000 to $26,000 an acre is what they were going to have to pay on that property, close to the Bud Boulevard area and Fremont contract barriers. So land cost is pretty volatile as we speak, but definitely the data park is the pricing is attractive and basically is you know, kind of based off of the costs that we have into it right now, which a lot of that work was done 4 to 5 years ago when it was not as expensive as it would be as it would be now.
Well, one thing that I didn't get to put in my comments before I was finished here was, besides the one job, instead of 0.8 jobs, I believe this particular sale should be modified to adjust the amount of refund if we're going to be consistent with the calculations, and the amount of refund should be higher than what's in the contract. If it's $12,191 per acre, this party is buying more than 1 acre. They're buying 1.196 acres. And if you do the math, that's $14,581 worth of refund credit, not $12,191. And I guess to play even, Stephen, with everyone, if you're going to calculate a refund per acre, then this calculation should be adjusted.
Right.
And I think the math is correct.
Yeah.
Because it is per acre. If you look in that section, it says per acre, 12,197 per acre. So.
Yes.
Correct. And I think the math is still correct. I think it's still 26,000. I think if you start with the the bid price of $38,370 for 1.196 acres based on the 32.5, and you give a refund based on that same amount of acreage, it's $14,581. The net price is $24,288, not $26,700 or $678. Just to do the math. You can check.
Sure.
I believe those two statistics need to be corrected in the sale.
Yeah, David Mitchell, Yost Law Firm for Jody Weimer. How we calculated the purchase price was we took the 1.45 acres from the bird agreement, and then we broke that down to a per acre price of $32,446.90. And the job creation requirement, since the bird contract required 1 job for 1.45 acres, I divided 1 into 1.45, and I came up with a 0.77 or 0.669, I believe, or 0.7. So then I multiplied that times the 1.196, and that's where you get the 0.8 job requirement, which equates to a 32-hour a week job. So you can't have a fractional position. Just means they don't have to go a full 40 hours. And so that's why we put in the 0.8. And then the refund, I agree with Mr. Newton that we've got that broken down in the contract at $12,191.72 per surveyed purchase acre. So that'll be $12,191.72 times 1.196 if that's what it surveys out to in the end. And then I use the same methodology with respect to the purchase price. Hopefully my math works out at 32,446.9 times 1.196. Hopefully that equals 38,870.00. And if not, then I would agree that that would be amended in order to correlate with that math. And just by way of other background, Jody Weimer is the sole owner of JDS Security or Signal 88. They're a franchisee of Signal 88. She's been the sole owner since 2010. They plan on building a new facility there for the security business, together with an additional bay that they'll probably lease to a third party. So it's great to see this park is finally starting to get some legs, and I think you're going to see, as more people get in there, people are going to start looking at this park more seriously, and hopefully they'll start building out. It always takes one or two to begin with, and then others start saying, what are they missing out on? So this is all good news, and I'm fortunate enough to represent Summit. I'm not representing them here tonight, but that's another exciting business that is located here in town, another another notch in your quiver for this particular park. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you might have on this project.
Any questions for the applicant?
Great. Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Comments from council?
So Brad, your math is correct. It's 24,288. I'll fix that. Saturday morning. Thank you. So I had a motion to amend on the floor, which we didn't address. So I'm still offering my motion to amend for the contract to show one employee, not a fraction, and to adjust, as Mr. Newton said he would do, the refund price to be actually based on the amount of acreage, which is not as, it is the 12,191 per acre, but the amount to be given will exceed that, which puts the sales price based on the calculations here at $20,308 an acre. So it's just my staff report. You don't need to amend my staff report. No, but I do need to make an amendment relative to the one job. If you want.
There's a motion to amend the one job. Councilmember Jacobus.
I'll second that motion.
Cast your vote.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Any other comments from the council? Councilmember Jacobus.
I just want to say I appreciate Ms. Weimer coming forth and taking part of it. And for your benefit, Mr. Mitchell, all the hard questions were asked before, so there was none coming. So based on that, actually, when I get home, I will have my crown.
I would take the motion to introduce and hold first reading of the amended ordinance 5547. Councilmember Yerger.
Make a motion to hold first reading of ordinance 5547 as amended.
Councilmember Jacobus.
And I'll second that.
Cast your vote.
Coons votes yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Yeah.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to Jody Weimer pursuant to Nebraska law on first reading.
There'll be two more readings on this particular item. Item 22, ordinance 5548 pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Fremont Technology Park, Summit Medical Staffing LLC pursuant to Nebraska law. This would be for the first reading and request. There is a request by the applicant to suspend rules and hold final reading. This time we'll have staff report.
Mayor and City Council, Brian Newton. We probably won't ask you to suspend the rules. We're still waiting for the legal description, so we should have that by the next meeting. We're getting real close to having that, but they do want to move forward as quick as possible. Remember, this is the applicant that came to us 6 months ago, rented a facility. We did an LBA 40 loan for them. They've grown fast, faster than they ever could imagine. they're talking 40 to 50 jobs at this location, so they certainly want to move quickly on this process. If you look at the map I provided, we initially platted 3 lots there. TJ Bird was the south lot. What Ashley, and Ashley is on Zoom, what Ashley wants to do is buy the 2 remaining lots we have there. They're platted, but we're gonna have to do an administrative adjustment, administrative plat to get those combined into one, and then a combined legal description. That's what we're waiting for, is that combined legal description. So we're very close on here. We just need that combined legal description. Then we can move forward. Again, the contract's the same as the last one, the same fees. Hopefully, my math is right on this one. So.
Councilmember Jacobus.
Prior, you would say that we could move forward with the third reading, third and final. We didn't have the legal discussion. We don't have the legal on this, correct?
Correct.
So we really can't, but we can on the next meeting, correct? The new council can move forward and finalize it. Because we will have the legal, and that administrative plat should be completed by then. Should we move forward with this tonight, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I take no issue with it. I was just asking. And again, Mr. Mitchell, all of the hard questions, and so I have none.
Councilman Yerger.
Again, to play even-handed with regards to this application and sale, I would suggest that this needs to be amended to reflect 1 job versus 2 that's in the agreement. The calculation is 0.837. Based on the number of acres being purchased, that would round to 1 job. So I would amend to reflect 1 job instead of 2. The other calculation that I think should be trued up for consistency is the refund was based on $12,100 flat versus the rest of the contracts that are being awarded refunds based on $12,191.72, which would mean the refund here would be $26,136. I would make a motion to amend the contract to reflect both of those things before we consider.
Is there a second? Councilmember Jacobus.
I'll second that amendment.
Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Thanks, Mike.
Motion carries 8-0 there.
Any other comments for staff? Comments from the public? Comments from council? Councilman Jensen.
If there's no further comments from council, I'll make the motion to hold first reading on ordinance 5548.
As amended.
As amended.
Thank you. Councilman McMahon.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Yep.
An ordinance pertaining to the sale and conveyance of real estate owned by the city of Fremont, Nebraska to some of it, West Avenue, LLC pursuant to Nebraska law on first reading.
There'll be 2 more readings on this particular item. However, there is a request to suspend the rules and move to the 3rd reading, and that possibly could be done at the next meeting. Moving on. Resolution 2020-239, authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with Blue Source LLC to market the renewable natural gas project. Troy.
Troy Shavens, this is City Administrator Utilities. As part of the wastewater treatment upgrades, the city installed anaerobic lagoons and a methane scrubbing system, which takes the methane from the lagoons and from our digesters and turns it into natural gas of enough quality that we can inject it back into our pipeline. By doing that, we get natural gas, renewable natural gas in our pipeline that we don't have to purchase, and we're eligible for the renewable energy credits. In order to sell those renewable energy credits, we have to have a marketer. We sent out an RFP for marketers We chose Blue Source because they have the most experience with marketing wastewater treatment plant renewable credits. There are other ways you can do it with a lot of landfills, do the renewable credits, get the methane, but it's a little different marketing, and they seem to have the most experience with marketing the renewable credits from the wastewater treatment plants. There's no cost directly associated with it. We're not paying them a fee per se. What they do is they charge their clients who purchase the credits, and then they also take a percentage of ours, which is listed on here. The commodity is the natural gas. They get none of that. Basically, our wastewater treatment plant generates the natural gas, sells it back to our gas department at wholesale. Our natural gas department then sells it to our customers at retail. The D3 credits, they would get 20%, we get 80%. The D5, they get 16, we get 84. And the LCFS, they would get 35, we get 65. The LCFS is a low carbon fuel standard. That's something that only California has. They have, as you all probably know, a lot of emissions associated with their automobiles. What they do is they're able to take the natural gas credits and apply those to their emissions towards like a compressed natural gas system. Usually what that is it's a taxi company, it's a truck company, somebody like that is buying compressed natural gas credits because they don't want to switch their fleet over. They'd rather just pay for the credits than retrofit their fleet. The fiscal impact is the credits are expected to generate between $700,000 and $1 million a year. The natural gas value is somewhere between, depending on the market price for gas, it's somewhere between $250,000 and $400,000 a year. So you can see it's a good revenue source for us. I can try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Troy?
Blue Source also does the marketing for Lincoln.
Yeah.
Any comments from the public? Comments from council? I would take a motion in regards to resolution 2020-239, authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with Blue Source LLC. Councilman Yerger.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-239.
Councilman Legan.
I'll second that.
Cast your vote.
Coons votes yes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Thank you.
Item 25. Councilmember, your item request for an executive session.
Yes, I put this on the agenda. I would like to request that the council go into executive session to discuss the status of contract issues and potential threatened litigation. It'll be a short meeting, but we didn't have it the last couple of times. I think it's appropriate for us to have a brief discussion before we change council at the next meeting. I make that motion to go into executive session to discuss the status of contract issues and potential threatened litigation.
And for the further reason. Further reason the executive session is necessary for the protection of public interest. Is there a second? Sorry, Councilman Legan.
Yeah. Didn't legal send out some information that this wasn't necessary, there was nothing to discuss?
Maybe it wasn't logical.
Yeah, there was correspondence provided earlier. From my perspective, I don't have a reason for executive session at this time.
Is there a second for the motion? Councilmember Jacobus.
I'll second the motion.
A motion's been made and seconded to go into executive session for the purpose of a strategy session with respect to contract negotiation, potential threat and litigation for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for protection of public interest. Is there any discussion? The pending motion is to go into executive session for the purpose of strategy session with respect to contract negotiation and potential threat and litigation, and for the further reason the executive session is necessary for protection of public interest. Cast your votes.
Coons votes no.
The motion is 4-4.
Motion fails. Item 26. I would take motion to adjourn. Councilmember Jacobus.
Make motion to adjourn.
Councilmember Lakeband. I will second that. Cast your votes.
Coons votes yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Council member.
Alrighty. Thank you all.